the Podium, an Olympics podcast, and we are here for another games review, our third one, and we're also here for the second time for a World's Fair review. We get to talk about the great combo of World's Fair and Olympics, because nothing went wrong with that last time, and certainly by doing this second time, it couldn't possibly go worse. We are here to talk about the ever so famous 1904 Philly, Chicago, St. Louis Olympics. Of all places, it ended up in St. Louis. You know, you got the prestige of Athens, you got the prestige of Paris. Where are you going to go next? Missouri. That's where we want to go. And everybody will follow us. This is, I think, widely known across the board. Anybody who even follows the smallest amount of Olympics trivia knows possibly the worst games ever, the biggest disaster of games ever, the most disgraceful games ever. To the point where even Pierre de Coubertin decided to take his ball and go home. Not like that didn't happen last time, too. So we're running into trends here in the early Olympic Games. My name is Colin, and also joining us again today, starting all the way out in California, where pickleball is becoming such a thing. And we might see it in the Olympics. Probably not by the time of LA, but maybe after that. Jamie Lyko.
How you doing? Good morning. Happy to be here.
And all the way from, is it Sydney you're in right now?
Melbourne. Come on.
Melbourne. That's right. I'm not going to say Melbourne. Melbourne. All the way from Melbourne. It is a man wearing appropriate jersey for the Chicago Olympics here. Mr. with Black Sox, Red Sox. I don't know which one they are. Black Sox Waterworth.
My Cardinals one is sadly in the trash because I don't like them. So, yes, I thought I'd celebrate the rightful host of the 1904 Olympics because it was robbed. Screw you, Theodore Roosevelt. Never voting for you again. Not that I ever did anyway, but whatever. Screw you. Should have been in Chicago.
There is so much to cover in this episode. And at the same time, I feel like we're not going to do anything justice here. You should probably just go get the book that Ben's got next to him. The most famous event from this, the marathon, I found dozens of podcasts dedicated just to the marathon. Trying to find whoever else had covered the whole Olympics is a bit of a stretch, but these Olympics are famous. No, these Olympics are infamous is the right word. And I don't know about either of you, how much you knew about this going in. I mean, I just always sort of heard about, 1900, 1904. We don't really talk about those. Let's just move on. Nothing happened in those years. And it really wasn't until I think last year, before we covered the Paris Olympics, where I think, Ben, you started by interviewing that author who wrote the book on George Iser. And I listened to that interview. I'm like, man, this is crazy. And then I think it was on one of the episodes we're recording. I don't know if you were on it, Jamie. I know that Alex was on it, where Alex started talking over and over about the marathon and all the crazy stuff that happened in there. And, you sort of will hear people say, it wasn't a very good marathon. It was pretty controversial. And then you start hearing all the stories. You're like, wow, I got to find out more about these Olympics. I mean, I've been diving into these Olympics on and off over the last year now. And it's crazy. It's wild. It is everything that people say about it. It's disgraceful. It's it is James Sullivan. That's what it is. Jamie, you want to start us off by telling us about your knowledge going into this and what are your overall thoughts, having done a little bit more of a deep dive into it?
I mean, because we're Olympic nerds, we know about the 1904 Olympics, but if you asked the average, not even average, if you asked the, relatively rabid sports fan in this country, what cities in the United States have hosted the Olympics, like it's this in Squaw Valley, 1960 Winter Olympics for the ones that people are just going to be like, where, what, how, and, so, and yeah, I think it's an easily, it's easy to bash it in retrospect, but it's also pretty easy to bash it like in the moment, which I think maybe is different than 1900. I mean, like they were still figuring some things out. They were trying stuff. You can look back on 1900 and be like, yeah, that was a bad call. But this is like really bad calls, guy. Like in the moment, like let's give the runners some water. I don't know, maybe.
No.
And it's an interesting time in America. It's one of our most interesting presidents kind of gets involved, even though he didn't want to. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure. I mean, we put the guy on the side of a mountain. He's a hero here. James Sullivan not so much. But again, we'll talk about that too. But hey, you know what? America did well, so I'm happy with the performance overall.
Because you had like 89% of the fucking athletes. I mean, you kind of.
You know what though? Like France dominated and they had the most athletes, and I think the same thing happens in 1908. So in retrospect, it's easy to bash it and it's ridiculous, but you know.
I'm just saying for Brisbane 2032, you know, we need to bring back these traditions of just having this many there. Yeah,
you get 2/3 of the athletes.
Yeah, exactly. I similar to like both what you said, like it was familiar with you, sort of knew the levels that were there, but I think, you know, a couple of years ago, we had Michael Loynd on. He wrote the book, which I've got next to me as well. I'm going to hold it up. Just go and buy it. The Waterman, which is about Charlie Daniels, the first ever American swimmer, who I'm sure we'll talk about in this episode. And that kind of painted a real extra picture of St. Louis for me. And then through hearing about the marathon, then George Iser, when we had Josh Prager on to talk about that as well, you know, sort of added to it all there. So kind of it just added to my mystique opinion of these games. And I think I said in the last episode that it's kind of up there with Antwerp as kind of, you know, those games where I'm like, oh God, you know, let's learn more about them. Because you touch on Squaw Valley. To me, the three most random Olympic cities in the history of the Olympics are Antwerp, Squaw Valley, and St. Louis. You know, I mean, even you'd argue Atlanta's kind of random because you probably think to yourself, like, what American cities have hosted the Olympics? You know, you'd straight away go like LA, New York, Chicago. And New York, Chicago never hosted Olympics. Should have hosted an Olympics, 1904. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's just batshit crazy. It's so fascinating to read all about everything that happened, and obviously the marathon gets the lion's share of the attention. I mean, everything you search for it on YouTube is all about the marathon. Even a video titled 1904 Olympics were the craziest ever. Like in a 15-minute video, I think 14 and a half of it talk about the marathon. So I think what I found fascinating is learning about some of these other aspects of it. You know, the first African Americans who officially competed at these Olympics, George Iser, you know, the one-legged gymnast, you know, things like that we're going to talk about. Charlie Daniels, these sort of people. And the Australians, I mean, I was learning some amazing things about our athletes too. So, yeah, there's a lot more than the marathon, an incredibly batshit crazy Olympics. And a city that, as I discovered in a news story from a couple of years ago on like NBC, embraces the Olympics. They've now got the Olympic rings there. They've got all these like monuments to the stadiums and everything there too. So even though it's bloody random that they hosted the Olympics, St. Louis cares about it. It's good for them.
I don't know if either of you have ever been to St. Louis. I mean, I haven't. I know my brother went there, I think, years ago, and he basically said, like, it is a crazy place to drive. Like, it looks incredible, you know, as you're approaching it and stuff like that. But Ben, you already shook your head. Jamie, have you ever been as far out as St. Louis, Missouri?
Oh, yeah. I've been to there twice, 3 times, all kind of on cross-country trips. We hung out there for a few days, checked out a Cardinals game. I wouldn't put it that highly ranked on the worst cities to drive in. It's got some company there, certainly.
Isn't it the most dangerous city in America at the moment? Like, statistically speaking, by like murders and crime? Did I see that on a list recently?
It's St. Louis is up there. Yeah.
Okay.
East St. Louis is notoriously pretty bad.
Good to know.
Yeah, I just remember, I think it was the first Chevy Chase vacation movie where he's driving through St. Louis and he's basically on the wrong side of the tracks. And they're basically stealing like his hubcaps and stuff like that while they're trying to give him directions. That's one scene I remember.
I think like to me, it comes down like a lot of the places I've not been to, I base it on the sporting teams, right? And, you know, I sort of had a thing with a girl once and she was a big Cardinals fan, so I don't really give a shit about them. But I did jump on board the Blues winning the Stanley Cup in 2019 because that was the same year that the Raptors won the championship. So it was kind of like 2 fresh teams winning it. And just listening to Gloria, dun, 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 like their goal, their celebration song. So I had a bit of a soft spot for the Blues. Same name as my football team. And Nathan Walker, obviously still plays for them right now, Aussie hockey player. So outside of the city, the sporting teams, sure, go the Blues. Screw the Cardinals.
Obviously, it's a big sports market. We know that just from, you know, modern day. You mentioned the Blues. I mean, that's pretty much my exposure to St. Louis. Growing up, you know, I think you almost were obligated to cheer for St. Louis if you weren't cheering for Winnipeg here, because the big player from St. Louis was Brett Hull. And Brett Hull is from Winnipeg, grew up in Winnipeg. And actually, my old elementary school, they had like their trophy cabinet where, you know, they would keep everybody. And you could go back and see like 1970 whatever, most valuable player in the city of Winnipeg, Brett Hull and stuff like that. So it was always exciting, to see when St. Louis eventually did win. I think there were a lot of people in my generation. It's like, oh, I've been rooting for them since Brett Hull's days.
The one thing I'll say too, that St. Louis, the most random city to host the Olympics ever, maybe up there. Also the most random NHL team that Wayne Gretzky ever played for, and I think everybody forgets that he played like a season and a half with St. Louis.
Very briefly.
Yeah, you didn't know that, Jamie? There you go. See, Wayne Gretzky played with St. Louis.
You're exactly right. I totally forgot. If you would, I remember it, but if you were like, name all the teams Gretzky played for, I would have sadly forgotten St. Louis.
That was like his stop in between Los Angeles and New York, if I remember.
Yeah, and he went. I watched a documentary on that recently, and like he dragged them, I think, to the playoffs, and then like halfway through the next, and they were trying to build like a super team in the 90s, and it just didn't work. So yeah,
they had to wait a couple decades to get there.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at where the world was at. Some facts on the year of 1904. You already mentioned him, Jamie, the U.S. President Theodore or Teddy Roosevelt. I mean, he kind of goes by both. I mean, he's got to be up there. Yes, you're going to have like your Lincolns and your Kennedys, I think, as presidents are more famous. But I mean, if you're looking at like who is a famous figure, even outside of being a president, I mean, Teddy Roosevelt was like, I guess, nationally or even worldwide known just as this adventurer. And wasn't he like the mayor of New York or something like that prior to that? I've seen him depicted so many different movies and TV shows over the years where, you realize like, whoa, this guy was like world famous long before he was a president.
Yeah, I mean, we put him on a mountain, like he's on
Mount
Rushmore.
You named a soft toy after him, didn't you? Wasn't he the teddy bear? That's
he's I think the teddy bear comes from him. Yeah, he was like, I think his accomplishments are amazing, but they get elevated, I think, because of the time when he was president, when, we're not yet a world power. We're kind of coming into our own. We're kind of trying to create our mythology to kind of go up against the actual history that a lot of other countries have. And he is, becomes kind of the definition of the American man. I mean, he's a rancher and a hunter and a conservationist, and he boxed and he rode at Harvard. And, he joins epic mustache, Secretary of the Navy, goes to the Spanish-American War and, leads the group called the Rough Riders, and they win the Battle of San Juan Hill. Then he's the governor of New York, and he becomes president at this, interesting time called the Progressive Era. And he's a Republican, but if you look at the things that he was backing, he doesn't sound like a Republican today. That's for sure. I mean, he was into trust busting, and he was into, having a balance between backing labor and corporations. But the idea wasn't to like get rich guys rich. It was to like serve the public. So, I mean, he starts the conservation era in this country. I mean, like the majority of our national parks are, directly because of Teddy Roosevelt.
He's the type of guy you would think should have been the spokesman for these Olympics. This is up his alley.
I find that really interesting that he was kind of, and I'm sure we'll get into it more, but he was hesitant. And I think strictly, like, he probably would have loved to go and like, I'll jump into the, welterweight boxing match. But I think it was, I think two things I think federal overreach was something we really were, wary of in this country at the time, not so much anymore. And also I think he must have known how 1900 went. He he was an operator in the struggle to figure out where to have these games. And I don't think he necessarily would have been, jumping off the bench to get in the game if these were going to be another failure, because it's not only an election year right after or during, probably these games went on for so long, but it's his first election. He hasn't been elected president yet. He's only president because William McKinley got shot in 1901 in another exposition in Buffalo. So
it was during. I read that apparently the reason why he didn't attend was because it was frowned upon for him to use such an event as political purposes, and he attended the World's Fair after the Olympics had finished, after he'd been re-elected or elected. So that's what I read. Yeah.
I mean, you consider these took place over like 5, 6, 7 months too. I mean, he has his time. He'd be like, well, I'll get there sometime in the fall.
And who was the other Roosevelt related? Franklin? Is he related to Teddy Roosevelt?
They're cousins. Yes. They're cousins.
Right.
Franklin Delano.
Very different.
Yes.
Politically, it seems.
Very different politically. running the country during very, very different times.
Yeah.
Only one of them was played by Kiefer Sutherland, so it wasn't.
Which one did Kiefer play?
Which
He played-
had to be Teddy. Had to be Teddy.
No, he played Franklin in the First Lady. Gillian Anderson played his wife, the famous.
Kiefer's a Teddy, if you ask me.
Oh, he's a big
Kiefer's
Teddy.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's a big Teddy.
I'd Teddy him.
Interesting Olympic connection. You guys probably know this, but Theodore Roosevelt also has a cousin named Julian Roosevelt, who was a sailor and won gold in Helsinki in the 6-meter class. Then went on to become a member of the USOC and was a member of the IOC until he died in 1986. I'm not sure when he took over, but he was a staunch critic of Avery Brundage, and he was.
That's why we like him.
Yeah, and was outspoken. And he and I'm going to blank on the other gentleman's name who was a member of the IOC at the time.
Kiefer Sutherland.
Both voted. Both was Kiefer Sutherland. They both went against Carter and didn't, and voted at the IOC to against the boycott, against any kind of changing the games in 1980. So
we have Americans on the
Olympic
show.
connection.
Look at that. There you go. And he basically told Chicago that they can't have it, right? He sided with St. Louis, essentially. Did I read that correctly? That he was one of the voices that allowed St. Louis to take the Olympics away from Chicago?
I mean, Colin, do you want to?
If I'm jumping ahead, I apologize.
It's a jumbled mess trying to figure out where it's essentially the plot of a Godfather movie about how these Olympics end up going to St. Louis. We'll get there though.
Sorry.
I'm not going to have much to add this time or next time. It probably won't be until sometime in 2026 where you hear me talk about a Canadian prime minister again, because Wilfrid Laurier was still prime minister. I mean, I'll just say again, he's the $5 bill guy. Everybody knows him here in Canada. If you've ever been to Canada, you probably handled some of his cash. Prime Minister of Australia, Ben, you have a country here. You have something to talk about.
We finally have a country now. We were officially a country 3 years prior to this, so go us. And just like it was only about 10, 15 years ago, we had multiple prime ministers in a year. Not just one, but we had 3. So we started the year with Alfred Deakin, who is regarded as one of the most influential, greatest prime ministers of all time. I'm seeing here a few rankings historically, not many in Australia. We're not like America or Canada where we often rank our prime ministers, but he's landed in the top couple on a few. From The Age back in 2004, Monash University ranked him up highly. But having said that, he also was known for a few controversial things, such as the White Australia policy. Not one of our proudest moments, but if you want to get into the depths of our history about trying to breed Indigenous people and turning them white, well, he created it. So not maybe the best thing ever there from Australian perspective. Once he was gone, a guy called Chris Watson was in control of the country. And he was only in office, though, for around 100 days, 113 days to be precise. I thought, is that our shortest ever prime minister? Nope. He's our 5th shortest ever prime minister in terms of terms. Apparently had a guy in control for only 7 days in the 40s. So there you go. Didn't know that. But basically there was a vote in the back room and he wasn't popular in the Labor Party. So he was ousted, just again like we do with our prime ministers this millennium as well. And George Reid became the prime minister later that year. Scottish born apparently, because we're not like USA where you can be born wherever you want and you can be prime minister. So there you go.
I could be prime minister.
You could be. Julia Gillard, our only female prime minister, was born in Wales, and when she became prime minister, they put a statue of her in her hometown. So there you go.
Jamie, you want to go as a running mate with me? We could take over Australia.
Not that hard.
I don't think you want to have an American on your ticket right now anywhere in the world.
He apparently also was, I will say this for George Reid, the first ever opposition leader in Australian history. There you go. There's a fun little fact for you.
You've been a country once, and the first time as an opposition.
Colin gets what an opposition leader is, but you don't do that, do you, in America?
I mean, maybe we do and call it something else, but
you don't.
Like the leaders against?
So hypothetically,
like the highest ranking party, I guess.
Yeah. So hypothetically, it would be like if when Kamala Harris lost, she's still like the leader of the Democrats, and say like in your parliament, well, you don't have a parliament, your what do you call it?
Senate.
Congress.
Yeah.
Congress. Like so because both Canada and Australia, it's like a seated system. The party with the most seats in Parliament is the government. So the leader of the leading party is the Prime Minister. There is still like the second most seats is the opposition. They technically don't wield any sort of power. They kind of
unless you have like a 3 or 4 party system like Canada has, then you pull in the third or fourth place parties.
Yeah, so I mean, in my home state of Tasmania, we just had another election recently, and it's a similar thing. Like the leader of our state doesn't technically have a majority in Parliament, so he's kind of been held up by lower parties. So, but like that right now in Australia, the opposition leader of our country, she is like, not like she couldn't do a thing because they've got so little seats. So yeah, politics of Australia. We just had a prime minister for us. It's taken us 3 episodes to get here, and we had 3 in a year. So we caught up. We've had as many prime ministers over 3 Olympics, even though the first 2 we didn't have a prime minister. So there you go. But we're a country in 1904. Yay.
Funny enough, typical Australia, they've had 3 prime ministers since we started doing this series back in Athens. A couple months ago. So we'll have a new one you could talk about in real time by the time we get to the integrated ones. Liter of milk. Now it's funny because liters in our thing, but gallons in the actual write-up. Jamie, you're going to probably have prices for gallons of milk or know the equivalent of this now. Based on the math here from ChatGPT, it says the low tens. So I'm going to mean like 12 cents or something like that per gallon. I just did some quick currency and metric conversion here. That would be about the equivalent of, let's say, $4.50 per gallon now, which would be about a 4 liter of milk, which is like the big jugs you buy, which is about $1.50 cheaper than it currently is. So even including inflation, we're paying more right now. Milk. Yeah. Yes, milk was cheaper back in those days. Gas prices, we have cents per gallon. So again, probably single digits to low teens for cents. So gas costs less than milk even in 1904, which is crazy, but you have far fewer automobiles on the road as well. Super Bowl winner, we have none. We're not going to be able to talk about this for several years.
Has the World Series started yet?
Well, we don't just, the funny thing about now is college football, I think I've said this before, until the late 60s trumps any kind of professional football. So the University of it's funny because I'm about to say his alma mater where he went to grad school. University of Penn Quakers are the college football national championship, and the Canton Athletic Club is formed. And a few years later, they will win 3 straight Ohio League championships behind the skill and power of 2-time Olympic gold medalist Jim Thorpe.
Ooh. Oh, okay.
Oh, we'll be talking about him. How many more episodes do we have to get to Thorpe? It's the next one or 1912?
1912.
Okay. So let's bookmark that name. Jim Thorpe's going to come up again. World Series, who won that year? Do you know?
The Boston Red Sox won the first World Series in 1903. I'm not sure whether, I guess there was one in 1904, but it would have been after the Olympics were over, I think.
So basically that means they didn't win one again until like 2004, right? So,
1918 to 2004.
The Boston Americans won the 1904 World Series. They beat the New York Giants. So there you go. So they were the Boston Red Sox, obviously, back to back. So, yeah.
The Stanley Cup, we're still in that weird era where the Stanley Cup could be awarded multiple times within a year. It was won by the Ottawa Silver Sevens. I don't even know what Silver Seven is supposed to mean. When you look it up, though, it basically redirects to the Senators. So, I don't know, 7 Silver Senators? I don't know if there's something to do with that.
But there was another team called the Ottawa Senators, so there must have been a different Ottawa. Because then that's not connected to the current Ottawa Senators. There's that weird history, right? Like it's
unless they merge the teams at some point. But I don't know. I didn't have enough time. So actually, hold on, I have it right here. So the Ottawa Hockey Club went through several nicknames. They started as the Generals in the 1890s. They were known as the Silver Seven from 1903 to 1907. And then they became the Senators in 1908. So by the time we get to the 1908 games, this exact same team became known as the Senators, which explains why it keeps redirecting here. That still doesn't tell me what Silver Seven means. It's not like that was 4 years. So it's not even the amount of years that they existed. But they were Stanley Cup champions multiple times within that year. And I guess overall, AFL Grand Final winner. This is not a team that currently exists unless they became something or they renamed themselves at the Senators. Who are the Fitzroy Lions,
So
Ben?
technically the Fitzroy Lions technically still exist. They merged with the Brisbane Bears in 1997, so they play as the Brisbane Lions now. But they won the what was obviously still the VFL back in 1904. It was their third premiership, and I'm very sad to say that my beloved Carlton Blues made their very first grand final in 1904 and we lost to Fitzroy. So sadly, that wasn't our first, but I will gladly say in 1908, I get to celebrate Carlton winning. So in a year of an Olympics, we do that in 4 years' time. But yeah, Fitzroy won their third in front of 32,000 people at the MCG. So there you go. Congratulations.
More than attended the athletics during the St. Louis Olympics, double the amount.
And that's about not even half of what it fits now. So it holds like 100,000 people now. So yeah. And
can you tell us about Fitzroy? Is it like the St. Louis, Australia?
Fitzroy's it's not far from where I live. It's a very trendy hipster suburb. I mean, everywhere in Melbourne's basically hipster, but it's a nice little area. It's a suburb of Melbourne. Lots of great restaurants, lots of bars. Jamie, you'd like it. You'd fit in right there with the beard and the hat. But no, it's good area. And it's sad. Growing up, Fitzroy existed, and I always had a bit of a soft spot for the Fitzroy Lions. So Brisbane sort of still had the Lions, and they'll wear the old kit of what Fitzroy used to wear when they play games in Melbourne as sort of a homage to their heritage. But yeah, sadly, Fitzroy no longer called Fitzroy.
Popular songs from 1904. Everybody knows this one. Sweet Adeline. Ba, ba, ba. I wonder if that has any connection to Sweet Caroline. I cannot confirm or deny. And I don't know, we could unofficially consider this the first Olympic anthem or the first theme song of the Olympics, Meet Me in St. Louis. Although I think it's in the song, it's St. Louis, isn't it? Yeah.
Actually, the full name of the song is Meet Me in St. Louis, Louis. Louis, yeah. Someone named Louis.
Which the Kinks decided to rip that off years later.
I was going to say, isn't that its own song, Louis, Louis?
And say Louis. The song itself, though, I did look up. It is a song that existed because of the World's Fair that year. So technically, it is as close as we're going to get to an official theme.
Yeah.
And later would be used in the movie Meet Me in St. Louis, which the movie didn't go by Louis. I don't know is there a reason why it's spelled Louis but pronounced Louis? Is this a regional dialect from Missouri or something?
I don't know, because they sing the song in the movie and they sing it, Meet Me in St. Louis, Louis. That's a good question.
It's the snobs of the 1900s. They're French, Melbourne.
Yeah, Melbourne. We don't have a number one album for the year. I'm going to guess this whatever.
Probably Taylor Swift.
Please no.
You're fired.
Yay! I'm leaving.
Number one movie. This is the second year in a row. Here's the Spielberg or the Christopher Nolan of his age here. George Méliès, The Impossible Voyage. Now, I don't remember what the movie it was that we talked about last time, but he is the silent film director. I think most people are familiar with The Trip to the Moon, which was made before this, which was like the first science fiction film. So this was the second science fiction film, Impossible Voyage. But I've seen Trip to the Moon several times. It's only 12 minutes long. It's incredible visual effects. I mean, that's kind of what he was known for. Surprisingly, no number one TV show that year. But we do have some important facts here. The Bear was very big back in 1904.
Chicago was moved to St. Louis that year. Just going to call it St. Louis now because it sounds French. I like it.
The population of the world, 1.6 billion. The population of Australia, 3.9 billion. The population of Canada, 5.8 billion. The population of the United States, 82.1 million, half of which competed in the 1904 Olympics, I believe. And here's a very important fact for world events that year. If they pronounce this Russo or Russo, the Russo-Japanese War began, which I knew nothing about, other than the fact that it was a Russian-Japanese conflict that started in February. And this became, I guess, one of the things that now people look back on and say this is one of the main reasons why we had so few competitors from outside the United States, because travel was so difficult from certain regions here. Are either of you familiar with the Russo-Japanese War?
Can't say.
Only that it was between Russia and Japan, right?
In 1904, February.
Vladimir Putin probably started it. Yeah, I think I don't know who won. Don't spoil it for me. Maybe we'll have to. I mean, You know,
George Millay made a movie on it a couple of years later. We'll find out when we get to 1906 intercalated games.
probably
John Ambrose Fleming.
No, never mind. Joke was going nowhere. Move on.
John Ambrose Fleming, who patented the thermionic valve, the vacuum tube, in 1904. The ice cream cone was popularized. My kid's still using it.
At the St. Louis,
stop
saying St. Louis, Ben. At the St. Louis World Fair, apparently it was like one of the big draw cards there was the...
really?
I don't think it was invented for it, but from what I was reading, it became like a very popular attraction of the St. Louis World Fair. So, yeah.
I read that an ice cream vendor at the World's Fair ran out of plates, and he partnered with a waffle vendor to create the first ice cream cone.
Okay.
I don't know if that's true, but that's the narrative that I'm going to push because I like that.
I'm going to say
and both the ice cream vendor and the waffle maker were named Louis.
And then they made a movie on it.
That's meet me in St. Louis, Louis.
This is where these older episodes are going to be the best, right? Because like when we get to like, the Sydney Olympics, like, I mean, well, maybe, I don't know, something was invented, but we get to like what was invented in 2024. I don't know, world wars, Donald Trump being
Twitter.
back. Yeah, so at least these are interesting.
The first underground line of New York subway opened. Ismael Montes became the president of Bolivia.
I threw that in there because why not? You know?
Well, I was going to ask you, is he the one responsible for the water shortage that James Bond had to solve 100-something years
Dominic
later?
Green. It was the freaking Captain Rapo. Remember
Captain Rapo.
Watch Quantum of Solace. We're not making rape jokes. It's Quantum of Solace. It's a reference to a movie. There you go.
You have to listen to our other podcast, 007, which doesn't really exist anymore, but you can still listen to it. The 1904 Moscow tornado occurs. I think that this was what Japanese attacked Russia with. We're going to send you a tornado, and this started the whole war.
They saw Twisters where they could control tornadoes, right? Glenn Powell was well off his head of his time.
Sydney gets electric lighting for the first time. A little behind in the times there, but you're catching
Sydney.
up.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's not Melbourne.
Exactly.
It's just Sydney. Which is the more prestigious city to live in between Sydney and Melbourne?
Well, I live in Melbourne now, so it's Melbourne.
Well, now,
I mean,
what would you have said 6 months ago?
Melbourne. I mean, seriously, I've always loved Melbourne. To me, it's the best city in Australia. Sydney's like third. Sydney's fine, but I mean, Sydney's a supermodel. It's like, it's attractive with no personality. Melbourne's the Ben Waterworth. It's ugly, but it's got personality. So, you know.
Melbourne's Chicago and Sydney's a St. Louis. We're all going to say St. Louis.
Sydney's San Francisco. It's pretty, but ugly on the inside.
Famous people born in 1904. Actor Cary Grant, one of my wife's all-time favorite actors. She got like box sets and box sets of any Cary Grant movie. Dr. Seuss is born.
One of my wife's favorite.
Dr. Seuss?
I don't know. She probably read it before she did what she did, so I have no idea.
Glenn Miller, I guess, famous composer, band leader. Oppenheimer was born.
Yeah. Robert Downey Jr. Not Robert Downey Jr. Sorry, the other one. Cillian Murphy. Thank you.
He was born exactly as we saw him in the movie, bare naked.
Yep.
Salvador Dali, famous painter, and then one person died in all of 1904. Anton Chekhov. Oh, so sorry to see you go, Anton.
Rip.
I got a good
go
death.
for it. I was just about to ask.
Right, that came out wrong.
Got a great death.
Great death.
I hope we don't get to 2025. Recent events that wouldn't turn out well.
Archie Hooper, a Canadian ice hockey player from the Montreal Hockey Club that won the 1902 and 1903 Stanley Cup, was hit in the head with a puck during a game and eventually succumbed to his injuries. He's believed to be the first person to die from hockey-related injuries.
Aw, rip to him.
So, you know, everybody wants to talk about
Archie.
how dangerous the marathon was in 1904. Hockey, clearly more dangerous because people almost died in the marathon, but they didn't die. So Archie is the true hero of this era.
Did he get a funeral at a Super Bowl stadium attended by the president? Or no?
Archie?
No, too soon for those jokes. All right.
No, I'm
mean,
just
depends
checking.
on when
I'm
people
just
are
checking
listening
to
to this
see.
episode.
I had an over under in my head, and I'm trying to see what I had it at 17 and a half minutes.
Okay.
You came in the under before I got the first reference to that.
I'm just concerned if this episode airs in like November. I don't know when people are listening to this. They're gonna be like, "What?" And meanwhile, somebody said it's Robert Downey Jr. who just died. Like, what a terrible thing to say after Robert Downey Jr.'s funeral was
Robert Redford.
Robert
Downey Jr. died too. What?
Robert Redford and Robert Downey Jr. both had their funerals in football stadiums attended by President Trump, and Ben's being inconsiderate towards them.
I'm not being inconsiderate to he who died. I'm just trying to be funny, and it's taking
Let's
me
just date this episode
30
here.
odd minutes to get into it. Why not?
Famous Olympians born in 1904. Andre Leduc, French cyclist who won gold in the road race in 1924. Ivar Ballengrud, Norwegian speed skater.
Love him.
Norwegian speed skating, of course. Gold medalist in the 5,000 meter in 1928, 500 meter, 5,000 meter, and 10,000 meter in 1936. I guarantee we'll be talking about him in 1936. Another one, Lillian Copeland here, American discus thrower, a gold medalist in 1932. They're going to allow women to compete in that in a few decades, believe it or not. James Sullivan was not happy. Henry Iba, I guess he was the coach of the 1964-1968 gold medal basketball team. And Hugh Plaxton, left wing for Canada in the 1928 Olympics, and also became a politician in the House of Commons from 1935 to 1940. Good job, Ben's Chat GPT.
I will say that wasn't actually Chat GPT. That was Ben Waterworth.
That was you?
That was Ben Waterworth GPT.
Dug out your book?
Yeah.
Dug out one of his many books here.
Couple other big ones. Renee Lacoste, bronze in doubles in tennis at the 1924 games before winning 7 Grand Slams. Like Lacoste, like the little alligator shirts.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And Johnny Weissmuller.
Tarzan.
He was
born this
gold
year.
Medalist.
It was like Tommy Wiseau.
Now wait till we get to Johnny Weissmuller. That's good.
Oh,
that
hi,
has to be our star
Tarzan.
of the games. I wonder if any of these people were conceived in St. Louis.
I mean, the city of love, right?
It birthed Olympians. That's what we really got to find out.
If you've been conceived in St. Louis, let us know. Send us in a message.
Any other ones you want to add, Ben, about deaths or births?
I mean, considering I think I wrote all those facts, Ben GPT did his job and ChatGPT did the rest. So rest in peace to the Canadian guy. He shouldn't have died by a hockey puck. Sad.
What's your favorite we got to get a poll here. What's your favorite Dr. Seuss book?
The one what was the one with the things that come out of the wash when they turn pink and they all
Cat in the Hat comes
back. Was it Cat in the Hat? Is it
Thing 1 and Thing 2.
Yeah, I love those things.
Not it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I mean Green Eggs and Ham I used to read, but I always liked looking at the pictures when it went pink and the things came out. So I always liked Cat in the Hat. Yeah.
Was there one about a hippo? I'm trying to remember. I thought there was one about a hippo or an elephant.
That Horton Hears a Who?
There's an elephant one.
Horton. That's what Horton Hears a Who. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
My kids are going to say the Grinch. But Horton Hears a Who is another good one.
I think we only ever had books as a kid. I remember we definitely had Green Eggs and Ham, and we had Cat in the Hat. I think they're the only two we might have had. I only knew Horton Hears a Who was a thing when Jim Carrey did a movie on it. So, yep. So.
Oh, that's right. It was Jim Carrey. Yeah, I forgot
and
about
Steve
that.
Carell, I think they were the voices in that from memory. So, yeah. They weren't born in 1900. And that fell flat. Never mind. Go, Jamie. Doing well today, Ben.
Jim Carrey played the Cat in the Hat. He played the Grinch, and he played Horton.
Didn't play Cat in the Hat.
That was Mike Myers did the Cat in the Hat.
Mike Myers.
Although there's a new
Sorry,
Cat
apologies
in the Hat animated movie.
Apologies to Canada.
Yeah, isn't it?
I mean,
Bill Hader?
Only Canadians play Dr. Seuss characters, apparently.
Is Bill Hader in that remake?
That's what I was wondering who it was. I mean, I saw the trailer. my kids are going to want to see it, but he's not Canadian.
We did the Mike Myers one, didn't we, on the Oz Network? And I just that
was horrible.
The two things that I remember from that was that Smash Mouth song in the credits, and
where we killed the guy from Smash Mouth,
and just the one joke, which is not funny, but it's just so funny in a kids movie. Stupid hoe, and he's holding a hoe. Like it's so stupid, but it's funny because I'm an idiot. Anyway.
One of those never again movies. Now let's get into the big part of this. We're getting into the Olympics here. So just like it worked so well in Paris 4 years earlier, we have, let's count here, July, August, September, October, November. We have 5 months worth of Olympics here. So slightly less than we had in Paris. Starts on July the 1st, ends on November the 23rd. The reason for this, because it was the World's Fair. Now, this is where I'm going to spew out a bunch of the stuff that I was able to retain in my memory, and everybody else can fill in what they know or don't know about this. So from what I understand, it becomes St. Louis because Pierre de Coubertin said, we're going to hold this in America. We got a lot of athletes. There's a lot of interest in Olympics from America. They first were looking at, I believe, Philadelphia. Philadelphia said, well, we don't think that we can support something like this. So they said, all right, let's go to New York. They tried Buffalo. Buffalo's like, I don't think we support this. And like, how about New York City? New York City's like, nah, don't think about that. But then it comes down to, what about Chicago? And Chicago says, well, believe it or not, we actually are willing to sink a lot of money into this. We're going to build a stadium that seats like 70 or 80,000 people. We're going to build all these venues, something the Olympics had never properly had. And they said, all right, we're going to go with you, Chicago. At the same time, St. Louis is making a bid. James Sullivan, who is in charge of, the Amateur Athletic Association or something like that?
Union, Amateur Athletic Union.
Yeah, the AAU. So he is pushing for St. Louis. Now, the World's Fair, I believe, was supposed to be held in 1903 in St. Louis. They decide to make this push because they want to try to piggyback off the World's Fair thing. They ask, the IOC, can you just wait? And we're going to be delaying our World's Fair by a year. Can you just wait until you vote on the host city until after we voted on this? And they said, nah, mostly because Pierre de Coubertin had no desire to have it held in St. Louis. They eventually hold the vote. Chicago gets it. Fast forward a little bit. James Sullivan, I believe, was doing all these backroom dealings and saying, you know what? We can try to force the Olympics here. Or maybe he was just legitimately trying to create an Olympic-like spectacle. Decides he wants to get this exclusive deal set up with the amateur athletic, the national championships, for St. Louis during the World's Fair. This forces the IOC to look at it and say, we're going to get no athletes in athletics, which is basically the bones of the Olympics. They're all going to be in St. Louis. They're counter-programming the Olympics in a bid to take the Olympics over. Essentially, it comes down to them saying, we don't want to do this. Chicago, these are options. We can delay the Olympics by a year, and you can get it now in 1905, but nobody was really high on that. They wanted to keep this 4-year thing. Or Chicago just say, you can host this, and we can hope for the best. Chicago says, by the way, our funding didn't come through. We can't build that stadium. We can't really do anything. You might want to consider St. Louis. They end up going with St. Louis, and I believe Pierre de Coubertin basically then says, I'm walking because James Sullivan orchestrated this whole thing. He's tried to take over. James Sullivan's appointed the director of the Olympics, and de Coubertin goes home for another 4 years. Either of you, anything I'm missing in there or anything you want to correct?
Well, James Sullivan's involvement started even earlier, because what I read was that during that Buffalo Pan American exposition, the one that William McKinley was shot at, he apparently announced in the Chicago Tribune that Buffalo was going to host the Olympics so like 3 years before, he just kind of puts that out there. And I read that was because he was pissed that in 1900, when more Americans were appointed to the IOC, he wasn't included, and he was a relatively important figure in, sports, which were kind of blooming in the United States at the time. And I don't know when we want to talk about James Sullivan. I've got him now. Well, he's
pre-Avery Brundage, basically.
Yeah.
A few things are true, and I'll repeat all this maybe when we get to legacy at the end, but the power of the AAU and the power of the head of the AAU can't be understated. And how much of what's going to happen with the AAU's control of amateur sports is really being crystallized in this era. And they're already, suspending the Yale basketball team because it played a basketball game against a team that the AAU had sanctioned. They're already telling athletes when and where they can compete. Obviously, James Sullivan's keeping women out of the games, out of amateur sports while he's there. He's going to play a huge role when we get to Jim Thorpe, when we talk about him and his medals being taken away because he was making $2 a game playing barnstorming baseball games in North Carolina 2 years before the Olympics.
Just think about how much milk he could have bought with that.
It's a lot of milk.
It is.
He could have fueled the bus for 100 miles. And I think it's really important, at least, to American sports is important. I don't know if Canadians and Australians care that much, but
No.
I think the other important thing is that although sports were growing rapidly in the United States, they were also still viewed as something you kind of gave up when you got out of college. So no one was pushing back against the AAU and them slowly taking control over amateur sports in this country. And, you know, he's absolutely the pre-Brundage. Like the amazing thing is though the AAU stayed incredibly powerful until the 70s, until the late 70s, the Amateur Athletic Award in the United States is still named after James Sullivan. I mean, in this, this is the best, like, non-professional player. This Spitz won this award. Simone Biles, Michael Phelps, Caitlin Clark won it twice. Like, every famous American Olympian probably had a shot at winning this award, and it's still named after him 120 years after the 1904 games. And really, no one cares about the AAU anymore, or else I'm sure someone would have pushed to get the name changed because. What's that?
You care about it. You're passionate about it. I love this.
I guess passionately about anti-AAU, but
you gotta wonder, like, of all the awards Simone Biles has, I guarantee that's the one that's like stuck in a box in the closet. Like, she basically had 2 strikes against her from Sullivan's point of view. So I don't know how she would feel about getting that award.
Probably 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot. I read about nothing about Sullivan, but I read that Teddy Roosevelt did have a say in helping the vote get over the line. That I think he was sort of asked to step in and make a decision, and he chose St. Louis. And yeah, it is interesting, the Chicago note, just of what they were proposing, because I mean, it is very groundbreaking if you think about it, for 1904, for that level to be there. And from what I see from St. Louis, they did build a venue. I mean, is this technically outside of Athens? There's a, I'm sure you'll talk about that in the venue section. So I mean, there's still that level of that there, but from what Chicago were planning, huge on that level. But I think, just like Paris, I think, and these are the two that are always going to be the obscure ones when it comes to facts, because obviously we're all reading different things. I mean, I've got all these books next to me, and each of them literally tell you different stories about how this was awarded. The internet does too. Like, there's no firm rhetoric of how this all came about. But I think it's a one thing we really should mention, though, and obviously, Jamie, we've always said that generally people who are from their country will host their country's Olympics. You wanted to host this one, but you've got like 30 others to host because America has that many. But it is a big deal that this is the first Olympics that America had, the first non-European Olympics too, in 1904. And this would be the last non-European Olympics until LA in 24. So, LA
is 32. Paris is 24.
Sorry. I always get those two mixed around. Thank you for that. So yeah, I mean, lots of ones going out of the place there, but it's just a shit show. Is the nicest way of putting it, just like Paris. But I would say this is more of a shit show than Paris, because at least we knew Paris was on the cards to be an Olympic city back in the 1890s. St. Louis, like, barely was even mentioned on a list of all those American cities, and then somehow wins. Like, they'd be like right now if all of a sudden they're like, LA, nah. Let's give it to somewhere in Montana. I don't know. What's the capital of Montana, Jamie? Let's send it there.
Helena.
2028 Olympics. There you go. That's
and
yeah.
Like, just to add on that, the appeal of Chicago was, I mean, at the time, Chicago was, I think, the second or third, largest city in all of America. I mean, this was second, almost surely. At New York. Yeah, it was almost at New York City levels here. Arguably it would have been easier to get to than St. Louis, maybe a little bit harder. So I don't know how much we would have had the other athletes, because that's one of the big things that this comes down to is, are we going to be able to get athletes there? And the reason the World's Fair comes into play is for 2 reasons. One, St. Louis had all the funding that Chicago didn't have because they were given congressional dollars to fund the World's Fair. But on the flip side of that, it was supposed to be 1903, and then this delay of it to 1904 kind of forced the Olympics end, where nobody wanted to piggyback on the World's Fair again. Now they suddenly this is literally our only option.
And I think to note too, it was 1903 because it was meant to be a centenary of the Louisiana Purchase. So that was kind of the big deal around that. And the other thing to note too is that St. Louis and Chicago are traditionally very big rivals in sports, very big rivals, I think, in general, because they're quite close to each other, right, Jamie? So, like, if you look at a map of the US, Chicago and St. Louis, geographically very close.
I forget what the rivalry has. It's like the I-7, the highway that runs between them. Like, it's the name of the rivalry for the Cubs and the Cardinals are the two big rivals. St. Louis doesn't have a football team anymore, but the St. Louis Cardinals and the Chicago Bears were a big rivalry back in early NFL.
And fun fact that I discovered recently watching a random hockey video about team relocations and everything. Basically, the reason the St. Louis Blues exist is thanks to the Chicago Blackhawks. Did you know that, Colin?
No.
So basically, the Chicago Blackhawks, around about when they did the big expansion, I think that was the big first time they went outside the original 6 clubs. Basically, they played a lot of games down in St. Louis to try and test the market because St. Louis really wanted a hockey team. And they got lots of fans and crowds. So when they eventually expanded the league, added the 10, 12 teams, whatever they did in the 60s, St. Louis was there because they proved essentially...
They were like one of the original expansion teams.
Yeah, so the Blackhawks basically helped create the St. Louis Blues. So there you go. And for 2 cities that hate each other, that's there you go.
Yeah, I mean, we could literally go on for this entire episode just talking about the bidding process. I would almost make a pitch. We talk about what's the Olympic story made into a movie. This could be made into a movie. All these, shady deals and stuff like this power struggle between Sullivan and Coubertin. It's insane, all that. We'll move on a little bit here. But I guess one of the things that St. Louis had all the stuff going for it was, and they had the money. They had the World's Fair that they could group this in with. They had James Sullivan, who was merciless and willing to do whatever it took to get his way. The location of this posed a problem because when we look at how many countries end up competing, 13 is a number here. I've heard anywhere from 12 to 15. So let's just say 13 here. Also, we're still technically living in an age where a lot of this is being revised. I think I've got a couple of facts later on about some athletes that weren't recognized until 2012.
Is one of. Can I just jump in there? Because famously, a lot of people say that France and Britain never sent athletes, but yet they're credited on the medal tally. So then, Britain's medalists are technically Irish, but obviously back then they were competing. So as you're saying, sorry to jump in, but it is a case of it is being revised because there is talk of other countries that were there that have never been officially confirmed, and even historians can't freaking agree. Like when we get to the Australian medalists, it literally happened in the last 5 years that this was formally recognized that Australia had medalists at these Olympics. That's how still to this day it's being debated. So yeah, crazy times.
So few countries compete. We end up having 648 athletes. I know I'd read 650 somewhere, so it's probably rounded up. Of those, I saw something like 530 were American out of 650. Whatever the number is, it is around 85 to 90% of the athletes were all American.
Yeah, there's different figures. I got 89% were American and Canadian, basically, because you sent
we didn't have our official Canadian Olympic Committee yet. That wouldn't come until 1908.
So just to backtrack a little bit, so I've got here based on the countries that Canada and South Africa were the only 2 countries here that made their debut at these Olympics. So again, Canada is at a blurred line because there's no organizing body, but unlike in Athens, and I can't remember if it was the same in Paris, but definitely in Athens, we had to compete under a different country, whereas here we were recognized as a country, we had no organizing body. Well, because Australia, I don't think the AOC didn't exist for many years to come, but we still had that there. But the one
it honestly could have also been that they didn't want this to look like it was just the American Games.
Yeah.
So we got to at least recognize one of the country that has a certain amount of people here.
The fun fact on this, just quickly, is that 13 countries is half the amount that was in Paris, and this is the lowest official tally of countries ever at the Olympics. I'm not counting winters there. But in terms of Summer Olympics, 13 countries is the lowest ever in the history of the Olympic Games.
Sports, though, is much lower than Paris. I think if there's one takeaway that this improves on Paris, is that we didn't have so many random events. And I think the other thing is the branding of Olympics, whereas with Paris, the World's Fair didn't want to allow the Olympic name to be associated with anything. This was the opposite here. We're we're going to use the Olympic name for everything. So you have a lot of these demonstration sports. We're going to get to the most controversial one in a little bit here. But still overall, I think we have less overwhelming number of bizarre contests being contested here. Before we move on to the fun part where we get to share our mascots here, Jamie, as the American who represented 80 to 90% of the athletes there, is this something that you look on as American and you're like, oh, this is exciting, or are you like, it's not really the same if you're not competing against the world?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said before, like it probably didn't seem that strange 5 years after, because France was dominated, in terms of number of athletes, not to this degree, but, and I believe 1908, it's also like, UK has the vast majority of the athletes.
Even more so, I think,
in the moment,
these two. Sorry to interrupt, but I think the UK is even worse than France and America.
Oh, right. So I mean, so you're like getting ready for, the 1912 games, and you're like, okay, the home country is always going to have way more athletes than everybody else. So it probably doesn't seem like that big of a deal, within a decade or so of this. But in retrospect, again, it's like 1900 in Paris. It's like, how did the Olympic movement survive this? Like, how are we still doing this, 120 years later and going strong when like this sort of ridiculousness was going on? I mean, we haven't even gotten to the real ridiculousness yet. So, I think we'll talk about this more with Legacy. This was a big deal for the city of St. Louis, but it's because of because of the exposition. It's not because of the Olympics. So,
and it's also important to note, I think, that the majority of Americans competed not even like they wore their local club's attire.
Yeah.
So there were so many Americans that it wasn't just a case of let's wear the stars and stripes. They were the San Francisco Swimming Club, the Boise, Idaho, runners or things like that. But can I just add, Colin, just before you move on to the mascots, that just on the sports. So, big one, boxing made its debut at these Olympics, which was a big one. Diving, the first time we ever had diving at an Olympics as well. Lacrosse was at these Olympics. The great sport of, is it roke, which is basically
I think it's a play on croquet. So
it's a version of croquet.
Assume roke.
And then weightlifting and wrestling returned after missing out in Paris. And there's a bunch that got dropped, obviously, because we know, tug of war returned. That's the main thing. But at this point, after 3 Olympics, only athletics, cycling, fencing, gymnastics, swimming, and tennis had appeared at all 3 editions. So they were the only ones that had survived all 3. But and also, I don't know if you want to touch this, Colin, if I'm jumping ahead with it as well, but this apparently was the first time officially that gold, silver, and bronze were awarded. This is the first time ever that we had gold medals, as opposed to what we had last time, like silvers and all those sort of weird things that they gave at women's purses or whatever it was in Paris. But St. Louis has the distinction of being the first Olympics to officially give out gold, silver, and bronze medals.
Although I did find one fact, I'll kind of fit in here because you mentioned diving debuting. One of the controversies, just getting it out of the way here, was that you basically only had 2 countries competing in diving. You had America and Germany. Germany were considered the favorites. And I think I have the names written down here too. So it ended up coming down to gold for the United States and silver for Germany. But the Germans protested because it was all American judges. And apparently it was a very different style. And it's one of these things where it's like, okay, well, what are you ranking it on? What I heard was that the Americans focused all on just the entry. It's not like they did a lot of turns or flips or stuff like that. It was just all about their entry. Whereas the Germans are like, doesn't matter if I belly flop, I'm going to just do as much as I can. And in the end, the Americans won. You had one, I guess he tied for the bronze. The German who tied for the bronze ended up refusing to do a, dive off for 3rd place because he's like, clearly, this is stacked in America's favor. They issued a protest, but at the same time, the issue is that Germany had, I guess, sponsored and brought the cup. So even though there was gold, silver, and bronze medals here, there was also a cup that was awarded, I guess, to the winner, and I don't know if it was to the nation. And they said, fine, you want to do this, we're not going to give you the cup. And it became this power struggle now between Germany and the United States.
So what you're saying is that Reagan should have protested in Paris and that the judges were rigged and that they should have had different styles.
Only if she brought a cup.
Well,
if she brought a cup to hand off, that's fine.
We provided the cup. When Phil Wizard won the gold, he got an Australian cup. So, just saying. There were demonstrations. Was this the first Olympics.
Basketball was
demonstration sports because technically in Paris they weren't. They were just whatever. But basketball, hurling, which if you've ever watched hurling is an amazing sport.
Jamie experienced that this morning.
You did, Jamie. Live hurling before. But also American and Gaelic football, and apparently baseball and maybe it's possibly that it was there at some capacity. But seriously, hurling, not vomiting. The Irish sport of hurling. If you've never watched it, watch it. It is an amazing sport.
I heard there's a scene in, I don't know which movie it is, but the transporter guy.
Jason Statham.
Keith Sutherland.
Yeah, he's like about to fight like 5 guys, and he has a hurling stick. And he's like, have you ever heard of hell? I'm not going to try to do his accent. He's like, it's a combination.
That wasn't bad,
that was pretty good.
It's a combination of between field hockey and murder.
Yeah.
Is how he describes
hurling
the sport.
is an amazing sport. It's seriously, it used to be on like a Sunday afternoon here. Like they have the Irish Championship on, and it like, because everyone in Ireland, everyone's amateur in Ireland in all their professional, well, they're not professional sports. They're major sporting leagues, them and Gaelic football. That's why a lot of Irish Gaelic footballers come to Australia to play Australian football because they get paid here. But, you got a stadium of like 50,000 people watching all these amateurs who are going off and working in, construction on Monday. So, yeah, it's an amazing sport.
So let's get to the mascots here because there was no official mascot. I'll start it off here if everybody wants to get theirs ready, if everybody has one. I don't think this one is nearly as good as Tracked the Elephant or the 3-headed dog, whatever it was from the first one. But here I have Archie the Explorer. So he's a raccoon.
Okay. Archie because of the arch?
Well, that might have been where the name came from. I mean, there's a couple of St. Louis connections here. So just the description, Archie is dressed in a little 1900s explorer's outfit. He carries a small map of the fairgrounds rolled under one arm and a tiny Olympic medal around his neck. The raccoon represents curiosity, adaptability, and adventure, perfect for Olympics that introduced the world to America's frontier spirit. His explorer outfit links to Louisiana's Purchase Exposition, where people came to discover culture, inventions, and sports. And his personality is that he's inquisitive, energetic, and always ready to explore new sports. He likes to show off strange, long-lost events from 1904, like greased pole climb or tug-of-war. I didn't even ask for tug-of-war, and I got the tug-of-war this time. So Archie's the first one on the board. Next up, Jamie.
Well, I think we'll see what Ben has, but you definitely beat. That's my son. That's not the mascot.
No, let's go with your son.
Yeah, the Voltron.
It's a fox, and he's got like a Boy Scout uniform on, and he's got a little compass. But I have no amazing description
saluting?
like you. Yeah, he's saluting. Sure, man. He's not a full salute.
Your son
more
was
like
better.
a tip of the cap. Yeah.
Your son in a fox outfit. Now
you can give us a description of the son. We can put that on the table.
He's on my shit list right now. So,
and Javon
still kind of like James Sullivan, or
I don't. Like I said, I don't know what you have, Ben, but I think your description alone topples mine.
All right, I want to start off with I did a whole. I think I've explained this before. Like months ago when we were playing this, I just like spammed ChatGPT for a couple of days, and I think I'm all the way done up to Melbourne, right, with descriptions. But in hindsight, some of these are shit, right? So initially, they gave me Louis, the American bison. Right, there he is. Now, there's an asterisk to this one. So I've got a description here: is a strong, friendly American bison, symbolizing strength, endurance. The American frontier spirit, wears stars and stripes, maybe even a cowboy hat to tie in with the era style. Standing proudly with a St. Louis skyline or a stylized World Fair pavilion. But having said that. So when I run this document through ChatGPT, like help me fill in some blanks and I'll go over the rest, they see that I've written mascot, AI. So then they go, would you like me to create a mascot? I'm like, all right, come up with another one because, whatever, Louis the Bison. So they came up with Poppy the Arch.
There's the winner.
Now that is obviously the St. Louis Arch. I've got no description of Poppy the Arch, but look at that. He's Dutch, I think, not even American, but whatever. Look at that. It's red, white, and blue. That's going to be the winner.
I don't even think we need a description for Poppy there. It looks like an ice cream cone that's like got hands and smile.
Like, no disrespect to your great ones, because my bison one was also equally just meh. But surely Poppy the Arch wins. Come on.
Jamie, are you a fan of Poppy the Arch?
I'm a fan of Poppy the Arch. It's just that St. Louis Arch wasn't there yet. So,
well, it got the idea from Poppy.
oh,
Exactly.
okay. All right. Poppy's the inspired. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Does that mean I get to win one for once? Yay!
I think you take this one.
Ben, stop it. We only have 300 more Olympics to review. You're going to get some wins. Don't worry.
I just like to
we're
take
each
something
on
away
the
from
board
the
at least once
USA
now.
at these Olympics and they win everything. So there you go.
We're each on the board. It's equal right now.
So Poppy the Arch.
What I like is Poppy the Arch clearly looks like it belongs in like the 80s Olympics, but it's here in 1904.
What do we? So I've got a little description point here. So I've got Serby, three-headed hellhound, Tracton, tug-of-war elephant, Poppy the Arch, St. Louis Arch that didn't
Anthropomorphic arch that inspired the most famous landmark.
How do you spell anthropomorphic? That's a big word.
I feel like we've had this conversation on many different podcasts with you.
That didn't exist yet. Anyway, Poppy the Arch. Yay, Poppy.
So Poppy's definitely happy.
Poppy's popping
Big
a few
smile.
off.
All right. So moving on, venues. You mentioned the big one, Francis Field. Now, the thing that I found most interesting about Francis Field is that this stadium was built for obviously at the time, because we didn't even mention by the time St. Louis actually took over the Olympics, it was 1903. So this was already being built for the World's Fair or the athletic championships, whatever it was that they were planning. But it becomes the Olympic venue, the first Olympic venue here, I guess specifically constructed for it. At the time holds 19,000 people. Now, this venue still exists, but now it holds 3,300 people. So obviously it's been, revamped over the years, and it's much smaller. They have hosted, I think, 4 presidential debates there just within like the last couple decades alone. So it's still a fairly well-known venue.
They held those debates at the field, not just at Washington University. They were actually at the field.
Well, let me double check here. Notable events. The stadium. Maybe I can't find it now. Hold on. No, the adjacent Francis Gymnasium hosted the debates. Okay, so it's the connecting indoor venue. So you're right about that.
Is that where Biden shat the bed? Was it that one?
No, this was 92, 2000, 2004, and 2016.
Oh, 2016. Okay.
But it still hosts a soccer team there. It also was part of an Olympic festival where 3,000. This was 1994. There was an Olympic festival of 3,000 athletes housed on the campus for the country's top amateur sporting event. So they had, I guess, some type of preliminary Olympic thing. This would have been, I guess, leading up to Atlanta or whatever. And hosted the AAU National Junior Olympic Games in 1986, plus the 1985 NCAA Division II National Men's Soccer Championships. So still, you look at the picture now and like, okay, this is not an Olympic venue. This looks like a high school. Not even in the South. This looks like a northern region high school football field.
But there's still the news report that I watched. I think that news report was only like a year or two old. It still seems to have like big insignia on the stadium, like on the wall, celebrating the fact that I had. And I always love that. I love that when places celebrate that they hosted an Olympics. And I think there's a big plaque out the front too, isn't there, celebrating the Olympics. So, yeah, they're obviously still quite proud that it's still an Olympic stadium, right?
I mean, a lot of the other venues were a lake for swimming,
With no
a
lanes.
country club for golf, the Creve Coeur Lake for rowing. So 2 separate lakes got to host the Olympics here, plus assorted fairground locations. Obviously, the World's Fair. Let's hold the discus over here by, I don't know, the pig competition and the pie eating symposium.
That's my favorite event.
We don't have any official songs yet, unless we're going to count Meet Me in St. Louis.
Yeah.
But Ben, you found this. I guess this was a documentary that came out specifically about the marathon, rat poison and brandy. Has anybody heard of this? I got to look at it. Is it on YouTube?
It is. It's 22 minutes long. I would barely call it a documentary. I think it's like a short by SB Nation, if you're familiar with them. It's quite interesting. It's very well put together. It's got like 1.2 million views. I watched it before we came on here, and it's just going over the crazy history of the marathon. But it's entertaining. Watch it if you haven't seen it. I think this is one of those ones where there's books. I mean, I'm not trying to plug all the books that I've got next to me here, but I want to.
There's a lot.
Shout out to Patrick. He shared this in our group chat. This Images of America's St. Louis Olympics George Matthews and Sandra Marshall wrote this. When I say wrote, it's literally pictures. This is the Ben Waterworth book if you've ever seen one. It's a picture book. So you just flick through it and there's pretty pictures. There we go. With captions. So there, that one. And we had Michael Lloyd on a few years back. He wrote a book here, The Waterman. It is based on Charles Daniels, the American swimmer, the first ever American swimmer, which we'll talk about no doubt soon. And I remember this going into a lot of detail about the St. Louis Olympics. It's a great book. And I, not plugging it for the sake of doing it. I had him on the show, I think 3 years ago, but it's a good read. And there are other books out there. I think there's a whole book written on the marathon from what I was discovering. So there's plenty out there, but no movies or TV, which is weird. There's so many that you could do from this goddamn Olympics.
The marathon alone.
Yeah. God damn.
So let's get into our big three stories, the takeaways from these Olympics here. The first one that you had mentioned here, Ben, I mean, I have that.
ChatGPT, I'm not going to take credit for this.
But I think it's important to mention, even if I wouldn't necessarily say it is the most important story, which is just America kind of dominating everything. I mean, we have 13 nations or something like that. Majority are Americans. Half of the events, so what was it, 95 events in total? Half of them were only contested by Americans. We also have 6 women competing. I mean, James Sullivan, I think, has made many comments over the years and even tried to take events away in future games from women. The only women who are competing this time is in archery, so we don't really have them in tennis like we did before. Although they were allowed to compete in boxing for a demonstration event.
Which is
a
fascinating.
Bit of a step back
Isn't that fascinating to think that did not actually become an official sport for women until 2012? So
2000, yeah.
You think about
2012. Wow.
I think it was London. I'm pretty sure London was the first time women's boxing came an official sport. So it's crazy to think that they actually. I mean, that's weird to say this in a weird way, but it's almost ahead of its time.
The weirdest thing to me is that James Sullivan, who again, it was famous even going forward, we're going to talk about him again in future episodes, about women shouldn't be allowed to compete in this. And here he's going to let them compete in what is arguably the least dignified sport, the most physical, the least ladylike, if you want to, speak as James Sullivan in 1904. He's like, I'll give you a demonstration. Let's punch your lights out. Go for it.
Experiment, as we know he likes to conduct at these Olympics.
Yeah, exactly. I do have a couple of what I kind of boiled down the main stories in this being is everybody knows the marathon is going to be, number one on this list, no matter what. That is what everybody talks about, as we said, books and films and everything. This being the first time that we get gold, silver, and bronze, it is a legacy of the Olympics. Probably
that's a good one to point out. Sorry to interrupt, but I think what do you think about the Olympics? A handful of things. Gold, silver, bronze is a main one. So that's a good one.
And I think that this might be the first thing that we have with staying power too, because we had opening, closing ceremonies in Athens, but those didn't stay because we didn't have them in Paris. We don't have them in St. Louis. I don't even know if we have them in London going forward. But this is like we are starting something and we're going to follow through with this, and it never goes away. So that's clearly very important for the Olympics,
and not just for the Olympics, Colin. Because you think I don't know if other sports did this, but I mean, you think of not even multi-sport events, but there are still events out there. Like the World Athletics Championships to date this episode right now. What do you get? A gold, silver, and bronze. So can't confirm whether the Olympics created that, but if it did, then that is a very significant thing for sports in general.
Yeah,
and this is really the first time we get gold too.
Real gold.
Yeah, unlike now.
Yeah,
Theodore Roosevelt did he's a big proponent of the gold standard, and that's how of us basing our currency on gold. So maybe that's why it happened.
I'm also going to include in here as the third one, just because he's literally going to be the name that's going to come over and over again, because there's very few stories that you can feel good about in 1904 Olympics, but George Iser.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, insane the accomplishment that he has. And there's other athletes I'm going to mention as we go along here, but like a guy with a wooden leg coming with 6 medals in one games here? All in gymnastics. The thing that one day, like this is of all the sports, the one that he should have the hardest time competing in with a wooden leg. And he's pulling off a gymnastics. This is the most flexible sport that you need. I mean, those are the big ones that I have.
I would add, it's not that big of a deal, but Colin, USA and Canada gold, USA silver in soccer, our best to this day, our best ever finishes in Olympic soccer. So.
Well, did you dig into the tournament and stuff like that? Because there's some fun. If you haven't, I'll add it on here now.
No. Go ahead.
So the two big team sports in this were soccer and lacrosse. Canada does win the gold, but in the soccer, I believe there are only 4 teams that competed, or is it the lacrosse? Both sports, there's almost no countries that compete here. So yeah, right here, soccer, only 3 teams ended up competing. So you were guaranteed a medal for competing in soccer. And then in lacrosse, there were 4 that competed, but Brooklyn, so there were 2 American teams and 2 Canadian teams. And the American team that were considered the front runners, Brooklyn, they no-showed their semifinal match, which basically sent the Winnipeg Shamrocks to the finals for a gold medal there. But yeah, I mean, soccer, we're not 2 countries that you would expect to see in there. And hey, we got to dominate. This is pat on the back. It's bragging rights. So yeah, you're 100% right there.
Galt FC apparently was who they were, from Galt, Ontario. Have you been there before? The great city of Galt?
I have heard of it. I've seen pictures of it in an atlas.
Sounds like something that Jamie's Children's just did before.
I was gonna say, I got a case of Galt FC
That's
here.
That's why it sounded familiar.
I would add, I know we sort of touched on last episode in Paris about the first non-white competitor, but the first official Olympics where African Americans were allowed to compete. Well, not allowed to compete, I guess. They did compete. I guess they were allowed at the same time. So that was on record, and I mean,
it's Africans, right? I don't know that they were African. I don't think the U.S. had any black athletes.
They did have one. Yeah, I did one that I found.
Pelage, the first African American won a medal. He won a bronze in the 200 and 400 meter hurdles. But the other one here, which again, this might be more on the controversy. This is always disputed because one of the books I was reading was saying this wasn't part of the Olympic side. It was part of the World's Fair. I've read in multiple books that it was part of the Olympics. The whole anthropology, human zoos, essentially they got tribes from, at the time, what they called primitive nations. They had like African tribes fighting each other and like Native Americans and Filipino and like it just... things that are disgusting and you shouldn't be doing, but it was 1904.
I think that's, just to cut you off for a second, that's important to mention too, because past world fairs for decades going back all had human zoos.
Yeah.
This was simply, they said, or, Sullivan said, hey, let's work this into the Olympics. His idea being, we want to show why our white athletes are better, and then it kind of started backfiring on him, so we had to sabotage them more.
And that's the common story that I have heard. I mean, in the St. Louis book there that I've got, they dispute that. They're saying that, no, this wasn't part of the Olympics. This was a World's Fair situation. Mm-hmm. But I've mainly heard that story, what you said, Colin. So, I think that's, it probably happened in Paris, right? But maybe it was completely separate from the Olympics that we didn't ever hear about it. Not sure. That's that to me, the 2 biggest things that I find whenever you search anything about the St. Louis Olympics are the marathon and the whole human zoo anthropology situation.
Anything you want to add on that, Jamie? So we can get out of the way.
just that it's embarrassing, but it sounds weird to say, but I didn't want to be the first to say it, but you don't want to be like, well, I mean, everybody was doing it, but tragically kind of it was a normal thing.
As an American, you've got nothing to be embarrassed about, so it's all right to have one thing.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm sure St. Louis, Sir St. Louis always belonged to white Europeans, so
I think what I read was it went back to the early 1890s as when human zoos were introduced as part of the World's Fair, and it was something that everyone did have. Now, nobody said we're going to make them compete in a way to embarrass them. I think that's where James Sullivan, unfortunately, was able to do some of this, cross promotion of World's Fair to Olympics. And obviously it's not something that's recognized to this day, but it hadn't ever been done before of having it be a competition, between specifically superior white people and these tribal people, where I think the one story I read was that they actually realized that some of these tribal people were actually quite good. So they said, well, we're going to throw them in there with the white people, but we're not going to explain the rules to the Africans, the Filipinos, the people from across the world, essentially to just set them up to fail.
What's really scary is that you wouldn't put it past a certain current leader of the United States to bring that back in 2028. So,
Yep. He'll be out by then.
Well,
No, he won't.
no.
Oh,
sadly, won't
that's
be.
an election year. So yeah, I guess that
Yeah.
he'll literally be wrapping up.
Yeah, that'll be and he's gonna go. He won't miss
He's
it.
already claimed that he was a reason for it. Did you see that speech recently? I can't do a Trump impersonator. I don't want to do a Trump impersonator, but
Don't do a Trump impression.
he's claiming that he got them there. No one else. Him.
Big stars for these games. I'll leave a couple of years here for you, Ben. I did have 3 of them on here, though. Obviously, George Iser, we mentioned, we're literally going to mention pretty much in every single section
We did
here.
an episode on him. The only athlete we've ever had a special episode
exactly.
on. Yeah.
Frank Kugler, who was
my man.
the German who won in wrestling, weightlifting. Now,
love him.
What was the fact I had on Kugler here? Let me see. So 4 medals. He's the only to win in 3 separate sports in one Olympics. Now, this is ever. He's the only guy to ever win 3 medals in one Olympics in 3 separate sports.
Better than Esther. Better than Edwin. Look at him go.
I was going to say, Esther could never pull this off. Well, she probably will now that we said that.
Yeah.
She's in
ski mountaineering, right?
We mentioned him last time, and it won't even be the last time. We're going to mention him at least one more time next time, which is, I feel like, where his name's really going to come up, which is Ray Yuri, which I'll probably let Jamie talk a little bit more about him. Also, Ramon Fonst was an interesting one that I found here. So he was a Cuban fencer who he had already won gold and silver in Paris. So this was the second games. He wins 3 gold this time around in individual foil, in épée, and in team foil, and he did it in 2 days. So he adds 3 more than doubling his all-time gold medals. Well, he only won 1 gold in Paris, so now he gets 3 golds. And he does it in basically clean sweep of fencing here.
Sure, am I talking about Ray Yuri? Sorry.
Ray Yuri or anybody else you have?
Ray Yuri's great and all, but the standing jumping doesn't really blow my mind in terms of athleticism. But
I have a child who won was it 3rd place in standing long jump?
Standing broad jump. Yeah, I mean, I remember we used to do like that standing broad jump. Like we used to do that in like field day, like our like elementary school day of competitions.
That's harder than a running long jump. If anything, I think that's more impressive.
Well, I mean, I guess if you go really far, it's more impressive.
That's what I mean. Like it's more impressive if you jump really far. That's what I mean.
Let's see how far he jumped. He jumped 3.3 meters.
That's pretty bloody good.
That's from a standing position. Yeah.
Jamie, that's called the metric system. That's far.
What is that, like
9
over
feet.
3 yards?
That's long.
Yeah, but from a standing position, though, that's what's impressive.
That's like a LeBron James.
No running start.
Hey, I'm just saying, it took him till 1974 to get elected into the National Track and Field Hall of Fame. I'm just saying.
Can I just point out?
I think we're making a little big deal out of Ray Yuri.
Ben and I are the ones bragging on the Americans here. Jamie's being very diplomatic.
the guy, I'm sorry. The guy won
mental games. I'm tricking you guys into singing the praises of an American.
I will praise the shit out of him. He wins like 9 goals. If we're going to sit here in like a few months' time and praise fucking Eileen Gu for winning the standing snowboard flippity flip again for the 18th time, like good for her, you know? Sorry, Eileen Gu. I haven't mentioned you in a while. Oh God, we have to talk about her again soon, don't we?
Couple months.
Can I just Frank Kugler, like just this guy, right? Like triple sport medalist. But like my fun fact about him is that he wins a bronze medal in the all-around dumbbell. There's a sport that shouldn't be a sport, but whatever. He won a medal in it. He finished last in 9 of the 10 events in that time, and he still won the bronze. There are only 3 competitors in it. But it doesn't matter. He still won a bronze. The only, as you said, competitor to win a medal in 3 different sports at the same Olympics. I got an American here to mention, Archie Hahn. He won 3 medals, 3 gold, and the triple, like we think of Usain Bolt's pretty good for winning the 100, 200 double. Well, he won the sprint triple. He won the 60, the 100, and the 200. I think go Jamie, please.
Oh no, this is non sequitur kind of, but maybe this is why the AI named your mascot Archie.
Hey, there you go. I don't know if Archie was in the shape of an arch.
Well, that's what the arch was named after
like
he did so well in St. Louis.
He was just 60 meters.
Yeah.
He just curled over. That's how we would do it. I mean, like to me, George Iser, the fact that not only did he do it on the leg and all that sort of stuff we'll talk about, he did it in one day. 6 medals in one. That's insane. One freaking day. Like, that's just ridiculous. Obviously, we'll talk about someone like Charlie Daniels, but the guy who won, the Irish guy who won the, wasn't called a decathlon back then, because this is the first time we had the decathlon, but it was called, I have this written down here somewhere, I think it was just called the combined event. But they had to do the decathlon in one whole day, and he won it.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine that, doing the decathlon in one whole day. So he was a Brit, was an Irish athlete, but he represented Britain. And I have written his name down here somewhere, but apparently I have not got it somewhere that I can read. But yes, I'll get to the Australians soon because they're fun stories.
Yeah. Not to harp on American track and field runners, but you got James Lightbody, who won the steeplechase, the 800 and the 1500.
And the best name ever, James Lightbody. Like, come on, that guy deserves
so he can
to
run
win
so
medals.
far.
Yeah, he's got a
And
light body.
gold and silver in the discus, Martin Sheridan and Ralph Rose. Their names will come up significantly in a little story in London that we can save for London. But they play a nice little role in a pretty apocryphal story that Americans like to talk about
Book noted
in London.
You know, I'm going to forget about it, so I'm leaving it to you.
Oh, I won't.
I'm glad.
Going through our home country successes here, I'll start off with Canada. The biggest success was Etienne Desmarteau, who won the 56-pound weight throw. Kind of an interesting story with him. He was it says fire officer, which I'm assuming is like a firefighter, who lost his job to come compete in the Olympics. So we would joke about these people saying, I might as well compete. This guy's literally like, I want to go compete in the Olympics. Will you give me time away? And they said, no, we'll fire you. Okay, I'm going to the Olympics. He goes to the Olympics. He wins the 56-pound weight throw. He comes back. He's basically a hero, and he's hired as a police officer now. He was the only non-American to win any field event during these Olympics, like the only one across all field events. Sadly died only a year later at the age of 32. There's apparently a basketball center in Montreal that was named after him. So this is where they held some of the basketball during the Montreal 76 Olympics. That's actually named the Etienne Desmarteau Basketball Center or something like that. Also, we had George Lyon, who won gold. Despite this was in golf, he was a golf gold medalist. Only learned the sport 8 years earlier when he was like, I think it was like late 20s or something like that. And he later was depicted in an episode of a very famous TV show here in Canada, the longest running scripted series here in Canada, Murdoch Mysteries.
Oh, not Degrassi?
Where, well, Degrassi's been on and off the air over the years. But,
I always remember that famous Degrassi episode depicting great Canadian golfer George Lyon.
Golf in 19.
I think,
yeah,
I think that's how Drake's character got in the wheelchair. He got hit in the head by a golf ball by George Lyon. Remember Drake was in a wheelchair in Degrassi? I remember that.
He just didn't hear four.
That's how
Drake, like the singer?
Yeah, Drake was famous.
Oh, he started on Degrassi.
He started on Degrassi. There's your fun fact for the episode. Drake was in Degrassi. Yep.
I got some fun facts about Drake that I could give you guys off air, but
careful, you've got an American on here. You'll start a Kendrick war.
I already mentioned the gold for lacrosse and everything. Also, we won silver in men's 8 rowing. So the one I actually really want to talk about is the bronze we got in lacrosse. So they technically won by default because the Brooklyn team decided to no-show their semifinal. But the team was the Ontario Mohawks. Now, it was an all-Indigenous team.
Oh, they got the best names. The names on this list are amazing.
Well, okay, so I have to cross-check this list here because they may not be amazing. I don't know whether they're real. Now, if people know enough about, Native culture in North America here, they do have names that are, like Almighty Voice. This. Okay, so this one, these names are not their real names. So I'm going to say, sadly, James Sullivan wanted this team to have what they consider stereotypical names. Now, some of these names are pretty close to what they would be called, like Black Hawk, Almighty Voice. Man Afraid of Soap was a name that James Sullivan wanted.
I was going to ask about that because I'm seeing here his real name was Freeman Joseph Isaacs. But if we were to list the greatest Olympic gold medalist names, I mean, Man Afraid Soap, that's up there.
If there isn't a indie rock band somewhere named Man Afraid of Soap, we're not doing our jobs.
Performing
we
at the
failed.
LA opening ceremony, I think.
We got to make it a thing. Those are the Canadians.
Can I just ask a question about the Canadian? Like, I know you said that you don't have an Olympic committee, everything along those lines, but whereas we talked about back in Athens, forgive me, Jamie, I can't remember America's first gold medalist. Australia, obviously, we have Edwin Flack. These are people that are very well known at least in Australia. America, you won so many gold medals, you probably don't even remember the last one you won at all. But like, are these celebrated athletes? Like if Canada goes over their Olympic history, is 1904 like that watershed moment? This is the first time we ever won medals, or did people just really not give a shit? Because that's amazing that they don't really celebrate these athletes.
Yeah, these early Olympics, and I think the lacrosse one should be. I mean, I think the fact there were technically only 3 teams that even qualified for a medal puts a little bit of an issue on that. But most people don't realize that like hockey isn't the official sport of Canada. Like Canada's official sport is lacrosse. Now it's not nearly as big as hockey, but it was invented by the natives here. And I think that's why it was a big deal to these Mohawks. So I kind of want to say, let's make these Ontario Mohawks like the first real Olympic heroes of Canada, because this is their sport. It is technically the national sport of Canada. And they walk away with a bronze after trying to be basically being ridiculed in front of all the spectators by Sullivan.
It just fascinates me. Sorry, Jamie, to jump in again. It just fascinates me that you don't celebrate. Like, you know, I would assume that you would want to celebrate the fact that this was the first Olympics we won medals at as a country. Like, I know we talked about there was Canadians winning medals in Paris, but you're technically not on the medal table. If you look at the history of your medal table, I mean, 4 gold, like, again, I know you had like basically a lion's share of the athletes, you know, don't get me wrong, but like we've joked a lot that Canada is a winter nation and that you shit in the summer games. Not true anymore, but like 4 gold, that's more than Australia won at our first Olympics. So, you know.
Yeah. And we'll be at least talking about lacrosse one more time in the next Olympics.
2028. Oh, wait.
That is an interesting point, though, that I don't, because we don't, I mean, these names aren't known to Americans. I mean, no one knows who George Iser is. You know, I mean, I would say we don't have the oldest, longest standing, significant Olympian doesn't come until Jim Thorpe. And a lot of that is, you know, his there's controversy that lends to the story, but also his, you know, being a decathlete was, and I guess heptathlete, whatever, they did 2 multi-events there. Kind of is a side note to the fact that he's also kind of considered the first truly great football player.
Can I ask
one of the first true?
Just a question. Sorry, Jamie, keep interrupting, but like, can I, and again, this isn't me being a dick the way I say this, but like, is that just because you guys are so good and you win so many gold medals that like you've got so many people to keep track of? Like, it's an interesting perspective to look at it from 3 different countries. Is that any Australian who knows their Olympics will know who Edwin Flack is and that we celebrate him as our first ever Olympic gold medalist. And it amazes me, just personally, maybe as an Olympic geek and just somebody from the country I'm from, that neither of your countries celebrate your first ever Olympic gold. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it's an interesting fact for me.
Like if you remember, I don't remember what games it was where we did like, you know, our own country's athletes of the day. And, you know, I picked, you know, these 16 Canadian athletes. I think the furthest back that it went was like the 50s, because that's really, I think, and it could just be that's when Canada really started, you know, propping these athletes up and making a bigger deal about the successes there.
I think for us, it's a recency bias that we suffer from here that I think has a lot to do with, you know, sometimes being underwhelmed with what our actual history is and kind of feeling like we're always playing catch up to other nations. And yeah, I guess I would think it's less about us having so many medals and more about the fact that we tend to not care about the Olympics or Olympic sports here as a nation. I think probably the way Australians and Canadians do. I don't, you know.
1928 is the first time where I'm seeing a name where, okay, Canada is going to know this person for our athletes.
Who is that?
Percy Williams.
Wayne Gretzky.
Oh, yeah.
Jamie, American athletes you want to talk about?
You covered Charles Daniels. Just the thing about Martin Sheridan and Ralph Rose was the thing I was going to bring up and sort of tease the next one. But other than that, we can, there's too many to talk about.
Yeah. 90% of them. Ben, you finally get to talk.
Yeah, because I haven't been doing that enough. The sad news for Australia is our 100% streak of winning gold medals and having 100% of our athletes winning medals sadly is broken because all of our athletes...
But what a run it was.
I know, 2 Olympics. What a time. We, for a long period of time in history, only have technically had 2 athletes at the Olympic Games in St. Louis, one of whom decided to quit before they even started. Leslie McPherson in the hurdles, in both the 110-meter hurdles and the 400-meter hurdles. He basically rocked up, saw the hurdles, and were like, nah, they're shorter than I'm used to. I'm not going into it. So he buggered off. Our other hurdlist, Corey Gardner, now he competed in the 110-meter hurdles, finished 4th. But the amazing thing about Corey that I read was that we talk at the beginning of these episodes of who was the champions of our respective sports, our leading sports in our countries. And I mentioned back in 1900 during our Paris, the Melbourne Demons won the VFL Grand Final. Corey Gardner was a member of that team that won the 1900 VFL Premiership for the Melbourne Demons. Decided to take up hurdling because he was inspired by the athletic feats of Edwin Flack and found himself in St. Louis competing at the Olympics. So that was for history. Basically, until 2009, that was Australia's history at the Olympics. We didn't win a medal, apparently, at the St. Louis Olympics. But it was discovered that the swimmer, Frances Gailey, who had been always touted as an American medalist, was actually an Australian citizen and living in St. Louis at the time, won 3 silvers and a bronze. Now, the AOC basically went to the IOC and were like, hey, look, here we go. Actually, you need to correct this. Australia did win 3 silver and a bronze at these Olympics. IOC were like, nah, you're wrong. Go away. The AOC, for years after 2009, when they discovered this, kept saying, no, this is on our history books. It wasn't only until 2021 that the IOC formally recognized that Australia won medals at the 1904 Olympics. So, and literally, we're recording this in 2005. 4 years ago, an Olympiad ago, this was only formally recognised that Australia won medals at those Olympics. So Frances Gailey won all the medals. So if you take out bloody Leslie and Corey, screw them, we're 100% still. So Frances Gailey, he won silver in the 220-yard freestyle, the 440-yard freestyle, the 880-yard freestyle, and a bronze in the 1-mile freestyle. And I believe all of them were behind Charlie Daniel, or at least a couple of them were. So, we're still go, but this is one of only 4 Olympic Games, Summer Olympic Games, that Australia did not win a gold medal at. So there you go. We're kind of like America. We do okay sometimes. But 1904, the first time, and one of only 4 times we never won a gold medal.
Our underdog stories, I think that there's an easy one that we've already covered. George Iser, wooden leg, gymnast. The other one that you got mentioned here, I'm glad you mentioned this. This is actually tie into our controversies to follow this. Felix Carvajal from Cuba, Cuba/Spain, I guess. He was a postal worker who famously stopped for food and got lost during the marathon, yet he still made headlines for his bizarre marathon run.
Apparently would have won. Apparently I get ready that he got 4th, and that if he didn't, I think he had a nap, didn't he? Because he ate
he actually laid down at one point on the course.
That went wrong with his
there was
stomach.
Apples.
And he was so far ahead, apparently, that he still gets 4th. Like, imagine that. Like, that's just insane. I love this guy.
Yeah. And really, I'm going to say this is close thing to an actual winner, because before we move on to the controversies, Jamie, Ben, do you guys have any other underdogs you want to highlight here?
Just want to add that good old Felix, on his way there, stopped in New Orleans and lost all his money in a craps game.
Yeah.
So he
had
pants. No money. He was wearing pants legs that I'm going to bring this guy up again. Legend has it, Martin Sheridan, the discus thrower, got scissors and trimmed his pant leg at the starting line. I'm going to put all my money that I would lose in a crap game in New Orleans and say that that's not true, but it's a good story.
I read that delayed the start, apparently. And also I read that he sounds like a bit of a Forrest Gump, because the rumor is that he ran the 700 miles across Cuba. Like, he's done that. And that basically to get to St. Louis, he essentially jumped on trains and ran like Forrest Gump, basically just ran across the country to get there. I mean, and he'd never run a marathon before in his life. Like, I mean, this guy, I know there's so many people you can make. This might right now be the most Olympic movies you could make. But I mean, this guy alone needs a movie. Like, this is incredible.
Yeah. leading towards our controversies. I mean, it's pretty clear that the marathon is a big controversy. I'll have another one. I'm going to mention a smaller thing later on, but we got to talk about the marathon at some point. Tons of stuff out there on the marathon. I'll actually give a plug to a good friend of our show, Alex Lovelace, his podcast, the Fantasy Five Rings. He did a whole episode just on this marathon where his guest literally knew nothing going in, and he was explaining it for the first time. And it's fun to hear reactions of people who didn't. I did the same thing to my wife. I was explaining to her about the marathon, and she usually just, I guess, tunes me out and is like, oh, that's interesting while we're talking. Her jaws literally dropped. She goes, wait, what? You know, this guy had a stomach ulcer. He's basically bleeding internally and stuff like that. So much crazy stuff. Let's just start with James Sullivan strikes again. Now, I don't know. It's very hard to fact check a story like this, but he was testing some type of theory on force. Is it called forced dehydration or something like that? Does anybody have the proper name for this here?
I don't have the proper name, but I read it was he was trying to.
I got a proper name for James Sullivan, but
but the theory being that they thought that taking on so much liquids and hydrating was actually bad for you. So they wanted to try out to see how this would work on dehydrating athletes during the run. So this isn't a full marathon we know now, which would be 26 miles or 42 kilometers. This was a little bit less. It was 24 and a half. So slightly less, maybe 1.5 kilometers, 2 kilometers less than you would get on a current marathon course. But there were no water stations until the 12-mile mark, which is halfway through. On top of that, we already talked about criticizing Paris for starting it at something like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They're starting it here at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when it's 90 degrees, so over 30 Celsius. There is no paved roads for this route. There's no traffic control. These runners are running on very dusty dirt and gravel roads. They started with 32 competitors, and I think only 14 of them finished. One, I can't remember I didn't take it all the names because there's so many facts on so many different runners, but one suffered a stomach hemorrhage because he ingested so much dust, which I guess caused his stomach to bleed. Thomas Hicks, who was eventually declared the winner, actually was doing well until he decided to give up, hitched a ride, and at some point decided, let's just run this car around and let's pull up when we're getting close to the finish line. Hopped out, crossed the finish line, had his arm raised, was celebrating before somebody, I guess, like, wait a second, this guy got in a car and gave up a couple of miles back. Why are we going to, and he decides he wants to say, no, it was just a joke. Ends up getting banned by the AAU for I don't know how many years after this.
Can I just correct you?
Yeah,
so
go for it.
That wasn't Thomas Hicks. That was Frederick Lortz. Thomas Hicks was the Strychnine guy.
Strychnine guy. Okay,
yeah.
So this is the other one where I want to say Felix should potentially be the winner because Thomas Hicks wins this thing. Now, having said that, this should be the first case of doping in Olympic history. Is it all his doing? Probably not, but we can say the same thing about Camilla.
Strychnine. Wasn't there rat poisoning and brandy involved as well?
Yeah, brandy, egg whites. Not the egg whites maybe is a thing, right? And obviously the people got to do something at this point. But what bothers me even more about Thomas is that he was in such bad shape because of everything given. Now, I guess small doses strychnine is essentially going to be used like adrenaline. It's going to give you a boost, right? But this caused him to hallucinate. This combined with the dehydration caused him to have hallucinations where he didn't even realize how he thought when there was only 2 miles left that he was 20 miles away. And he was basically reduced to tears. Like, this is never going to end. Meanwhile, he's like this close to the finish line. Essentially collapses right at the finish line and then is carried across the finish line. Now, that automatically should disqualify you. So I want to say Cuban runner Felix Carbajal, he should be the winner of this marathon here. There's also a case of a guy getting chased off by a pack of dogs who didn't get to finish.
And the guy who won the Boston Marathon the year before, who was favorite, I think he collapsed like a mile in and then basically left.
Yeah. Like these are harsh conditions.
Yeah, and I think also that the winning time is half an hour slower than any other time in the history of the Olympics.
And that's with the shorter distance as well.
Yeah.
Like it's insane. Jamie, you got to have some info on this.
Well, fun fact, it took until 1960 for the IOC to ban the use of strychnine. So
Well then.
So doping's an open. He's
Apparently-
still with
Jesse
apparently-
Owens. Jesse
Oh
Owens.
no, I agree with you. Like, I agree with you, but I'm just,
Well, it wasn't.
apparently, yeah.
Doping, I think, wasn't even brought into like the 20s.
I think that's about when they started. So they were just banning everything all at once. But still, like,
Well, as long as you weren't getting
There's one
paid
thing-
to take drugs, you were fine. As you were an amateur
Exactly.
drug taker.
James Sullivan's fine with it.
Yeah, it's I jumped in a lot. Yeah, it's crazy. Everything that could be made into a movie, this is the most famous story from these Olympics. So, Oscar bait.
They did make it into a movie. It's called The Long Walk. It just came out.
Yeah, exactly. Mark Hamill's chasing them with strychnine and brandy. The only other controversy I really had here was in boxing, which, by the way, boxing alone was all American athletes, and they had so few of them that several seemed to medal in multiple weight classes. So you have to see the same people medaling over and over again, and several didn't even have bronze medalists because there were only 2 people competing. Also, going along with what you were saying, Ben, about not getting recognized till years later, there were 2 Norwegian wrestlers, Charles Eriksson and Bernhoff Hansen, who were identified as being American because they were living in America at the time. But it wasn't until 2012 where this was officially awarded to Norway. Eriksson, his citizenship was shown to have not even been gained until a year later. The crazy thing is that this Bernhoff Hansen guy, it was discovered only in 2012, that he had never been a U.S. citizen and never even identified himself as one. So over 100 years as well for these guys to be identified from another country. Who knows? Maybe by the time we get to 100 years from now, America is going to be like 3rd on the medal tally because we realize that half the people weren't even American. Anybody else have any other controversies you want to talk about? Really, the marathon's all there is.
Well, you mentioned boxing, and I should have put this under controversy in my notes, but I put it under story you may not know. So check me off for that when we get to it. But when it comes to boxing, Jack Egan originally won the silver medal in the lightweight competition and bronze medal in the welterweight competition. Later, it was discovered that his real name was Frank Joseph Floyd, and in breach of AAU rules that banned him from fighting under an assumed name. So I think that's kind of hypocritical of old James E. Sullivan that he's changing some names to make them sound.
I was going to say, what
more
about the whole
interesting.
lacrosse team? Racist much? Yeah.
He was in November 1905. The AAU disqualified Egan from all AAU competitions and ordered him to return all his prizes and medals. Do you think he did?
No.
Like,
I
you
would.
called him or like return all your medals? Like, I mean, was the AAU going to come after him? Like,
And then,
Well, but here's the thing: were they calling Jack Egan or were they calling him Frank Joseph Floyd? Maybe he just
There you
I don't know
go.
who that is. I'm Jack Egan.
it's actually a great point you make. Like, what happens when, Marion Jones, after all these years? Hi, Marion, it's the ISC. Bad, shouldn't have taken drugs. We want your medals back. No, hangs up. What do? Send the cops around? Debt collectors?
Like I remember during Nagano when the whole controversy with Ross Rebliati came out in the snowboarding, that he ended up on Jay Leno on the Tonight Show, and he asked, like, did you have to give the medal back during that time? He says, you don't have to give it back, but that's of course just an investigation. But he said, out of respect, he's like, I put it in a bag and put it out of the way and didn't touch it again until the investigation was done.
I think from memory, Jared Talent, Australian race walker who got silver in London, but then was upgraded to gold once the Russian, I think it was, doped, and he got upgraded. I think he told a story. It might be different Olympian, but it was one of these ones who got upgraded, and he was like, yeah, I never gave it. I've still got the silver. He gets given a gold, but he still got the silver. So, but I wouldn't give him back. Same Bolt tomorrow gets found out. Michael Phelps tomorrow, too many fucking slices of pizza mixed with your strychnine. He's not giving back his 23 gold. Keep him. What are they going to do?
Michael Phelps is just like, man, I can't find any of them. They're just like,
well,
I don't know.
we had Penny Alexia on. You didn't know where they were.
I hit him in different places, and I can't remember where any of them are.
What are they going to do? Send ice in to collect them? Like, come on. Like, what do they do?
They're busy.
I'm going to also check myself off for the stories you may not know, because Jamie, you just mentioned mine there about Lloyd/Egan.
Oh, sorry.
Ben, you have any to add?
This in the stories, I don't know. Technically, there were 2 triathlons at the 1904 Olympics, an athletics triathlon and a gymnastics triathlon that they went combined to form the gymnastics combined event. Now, if you remember our chat that we did have with Joshua Prager last year, he talked about George Iser's one of his events that he competed in well before he won his 6 medals was the triathlon. But basically, in the athletics event, you were a long jump, a shot put, and a 100-yard dash was what they called the triathlon. And then in the gymnastics version, you had a long horse, a vault, or a side horse. But then they combined them. So basically everyone who competed in the athletics triathlon were gymnasts. So, Simone Biles essentially rocks up to the stadium in LA and you're in the long jump, Simone. We're going to combine this with your
2 legs.
With your horse. Yeah, Simone. Yeah, she's cheat. 2 legs. Come on. Not fair. But that's probably mine. Nothing exciting compared to yours.
Ben, if you feel like talking a little bit, I need to go to the bathroom really bad, and I need to get some water because my throat's really dry. So you want to take on our tally of the nations and medal winners here?
Sure. It's 2:10 a.m. for me,
for
so
it.
I probably should speed this up a little bit because I've got to work in like 5 hours. So the top medal winners in terms of total medals, the Ben Waterworth USA model that we like to go with. 6 medals. 2 athletes won 6 medals. Anton Hayter of the USA, 5 gold and a silver in gymnastics. And our man George Iser also in gymnastics, 3 gold, 2 silver and a bronze. 2 athletes won 5 medals. Funnily enough, both Americans. Marcus Hurley, 4 gold and a bronze in cycling. And Charlie Daniels, 3 gold, 1 silver and a bronze. It's a really good book. I just want to keep plugging that book. Read it, Jamie. It's very interesting to learn about his life. And our man Jim Lightbody wasn't a light body because he won 3 gold and a silver in athletics. Fascinating to me that of all those 5 athletes, only one of them comes in your sport, Jamie. You would think, because it's always athletics, isn't it? But no, we have gymnastics, cycling, and swimming take out that. So very, very interesting. I don't think, one thing I didn't mention before in the sports, I just randomly thought of this. Shooting wasn't in these Olympics. There was a sport that was removed from the Olympics, and sailing didn't. I mean, don't think there's many bodies. Is there a lake in St. Louis where they've done sailing?
I don't think there's anything for. Not having it in Chicago is a bummer because sailing on Lake Michigan would have been very cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think there's anything big enough for except maybe the dinghies.
Yeah. Well, I kind of gelled over the fact I didn't want to go over the sports that would remove because, do we really want to talk about basketball, loto, and cricket not being there? But shooting and sailing were pretty big ones to be missing from the Olympics. I'll go over the medal tally. Have you got anything else said? Did I miss any Olympians there in the top 5, or have I gotten that correct? That was Ben GPT. That wasn't Chat GPT, by the way.
Yeah, I actually did. I missed Charlie Daniels. But yeah,
Charlie. There you go.
Great band.
And speaking of Charlie, can I just and we mentioned our good mate Alex Lovelace on this show. Rest in peace to his cat Charlie. If you've actually ever
sad.
listened to his episodes or followed his videos, Charlie always makes an appearance, and sadly, Charlie passed away.
Literally was the tiebreaker on Athlete of the Day during the Paris Olympics one time.
No, look, like I'm not like I'm honestly not dissing Charlie Kirk. I'm not, but I'm sad that Charlie the cat died. Their names are Charlie and Charlie. I just realized that. There was only one Charlie that I was sad about who died in the last 2 weeks. That's where I should have led with, Ben. But Charlie Clerk, sad as well. Do you want me to go over the medal table, or are you back, Colin? Are you? He's getting his water. He's getting hydrated, unlike the marathon runners.
We really only could talk about the United States here. 77 gold, 79 silver, 78 bronze, 234 medals in total. Next closest for overall medals, 15.
And just
over 200 medals more.
And also just to establish the fact that USA won 77 gold medals. All the other countries combined won 20. So, yeah.
They basically more than tripled all other nations combined. The next highest, we had Germany with 15 medals in total, with 4 of them being gold. Canada, third place, 6 medals in total, 4 of them gold. Cuba, 3 gold, 3 medals in total. Rounding them out, we have Hungary and Norway with 2 golds each. Austria, Great Britain, Switzerland, and Greece and mixed team all with 1 gold. So only 11 nations walk away with a gold medal. Australia ends up in 12th place, though, just ahead of France because you won 3 silvers and 1 bronze.
Can I just
Oh, good job.
add, is this the highest Canada ever finished officially on a medal table? Summer, it is.
It might be, yeah, because I think 4th was otherwise.
I'm looking here, your highest in terms of gold and total. So at least on Wikipedia here, they do it by gold and total. So 3rd and 3rd, your next highest, 4th in LA in terms of total, and 6th in terms of gold. I've got some fun facts because of my little database that I told you guys off air that I created. So Canada, first ever Olympic medals. Norway won their first ever Summer Olympic gold medal. Well done, Norway.
Ooh.
Greece won their first medal since Athens in 1896. Big gap of 8 years. Australia, we won our first ever silver medals at the Summer Olympics. And Switzerland won their first ever Summer Olympic bronze medal. So just wanted to shout out those little quirky facts for you there.
Do we know who the mixed team is though that beat you?
I was just gonna ask that.
Mixed countries of teams and stuff. Probably Americans and a Canadian.
Anthropology days, gold medalists.
The Papua New Guineans and the Filipinos beat us probably. Yeah.
So we have, we just went over the individual stats for countries, the top medal winners for each country. Now, how do you have nothing for Canada here? That's what I don't understand.
You have no multiple winners, as in
multiples.
So
Okay.
so this is when I say top medal winners. So I mean, we went over the American
combined medals, yeah.
So basically, all of your Olympic, you didn't have an athlete who won more than 1 medal.
Yeah.
So-
Although we had multiple medals in the same sport,
Yeah.
but we don't have a category for that yet. So Anton Haida, that name hasn't even really come up yet, unless it came up when I was going to the bathroom
You did
here.
both. Yep, him and
Okay,
George.
there we go. Well, I won't bother talking about it. George Iser, 3 gold, 2 silver, 1 bronze with a wooden leg. Thank you very much.
In one day. Yep.
In one day. And also Francis Gailey, 3 silver, 1 bronze, as Ben mentioned. Now let's get to our awards. The Michael Phelps Award. Did we ever decide on if we can give the same person multiple awards in one?
I mean, I think, will this is arguably maybe going to be the only time there's a sweep with the same person getting all 4 awards?
Yeah, well, athlete of the games, I think that who else do we go with other than George Iser?
I'd say
host
George.
moment. Yeah, Kathy Freeman Award for the host moment. I mean, is there anything other than George Iser that's like a feel-good story here?
I mean, yeah, I feel that's more open-ended rather than a person, though. Like, because obviously, our first 2 we gave to royal families involved in the games and the location of the events.
But I'm just like, such a negative games. So is there anything about the host city of St. Louis that's not associated with
because it's a unique city. Like, I mean, in all jokes aside, it is a very unique city.
Didn't have the hard arch yet.
I mean, that's the mascot. That's why they built the arch, because of old Archie. I mean, I would argue that it is the location in general just being a unique. The fact, going back to what you said at the very beginning.
We could say the fact they successfully stole it in such a deceptive, shady way.
But even sort of going back to when you were saying the cities that were in contention, I think like New York, Chicago speak for themselves. But like, I mean, Philadelphia was still at the time a very prominent US city, right, Jamie? Like, I mean, that's always been a very prominent
Liberty
US
Bell
city.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. Like, at this time, any city besides those 3 would have, had someone suggested Detroit, had someone suggested.
LA wasn't a big deal back in 1904. That was not a prominent city, right? In 1904.
We didn't know. I mean, it was dirt roads. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think really any city at that point in the United States outside of Chicago, Philadelphia, Boston, I guess I'd throw in there. But I mean, Baltimore, maybe Washington, D.C., but anything kind of out of that Eastern Seaboard and plus Chicago, any city would have been equally as,
But I think that's important to
that
note,
doesn't make sense.
because you think about where we'd been at Paris, global city. I mean, even in 1896, I would assume Athens is still a pretty prominent city. I mean, just in terms of the home of the Olympics.
Yeah, it's on the world tour. If you go travel the world, you go to Athens, like everybody,
it's
cradle of.
And even if you think of what we've got to come, like it's not really until we get to Antwerp that we've got a more obscure city. So I would argue it's the city itself is the fact that they pulled it off in some.
The obscurity of St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean that would be my argument if anybody.
Because like, here's the thing, I would say we could just give this to George as well, but like, was he that celebrated in 1904? Was this like, oh, we won in gymnastics and the guy's got a wooden leg, or did anybody care? That's the problem. Nobody cared about anything in these Olympics. You don't have any big hero moments for the athletes, you know?
Yeah. I mean, still nobody barely knows who he's, as you heard in that interview we had, literally it's to this day, people will talk about the guy with the wooden leg. He's in that quirky facts book. He's not a big star. So
is he's going to be our story from these turned into a movie?
Yeah, but to confirm, are we just going with the obscurity of the location? That's our answer for that one? Obscurity of the location. I mean, look, I would say George would be the movie is an obvious one, but I mean, you could argue three others.
If they end up disqualifying the guy in the marathon and Felix gets pushed up to bronze, that could be a great story.
Well, I was going to say we could make Felix our Bulgy winner too. That's possibility. That's, I think he's just as cult of a hero at this point as George Iser.
Well, I would, look, as much as I love George, and he's going to get 2 awards no matter what. I mean, I think those two I agree with you. I think they're interchangeable. Give it to maybe you give George, he could technically be the cult guy, and then give the Cuban guy the movie. So,
I think the movie is just the marathon as a whole too, because the Cuban guy not winning, it's like, oh, that's sad. Downer. Well, I mean, it's gonna be a downer regardless, I guess.
Do we want to do just the marathon as the movie then, and then?
Yeah, we could do that.
The whole marathon. I mean, that is
marathon is movie.
The whole marathon.
And since it's not gonna be titled Rat Poison, and something will be called Strychnine and Egg Whites.
Do we
another great indie rock band name?
I mean, that's going to be the first time that we don't literally have a country winning the Cool Runnings Award. So we're giving it. So do we want to give it? Is it Felix, the marathon guy?
Yeah,
Felix blah blah blah. Carvalho.
The one person you can cheer for in that marathon.
Cuba Athletics. So Cuba get their first award. There you go. Those tracking at home. The athlete of the games, USA 2, Germany 1. USA winning again. What a fucking surprise. Are
you getting anybody else in these games?
The athlete of the games on the sporting side of things, gymnastics get their second. So we've got 2 from athletics, 2 from gymnastics, 1 from wrestling, 1 from weightlifting. Helps when you have, obviously, our first winner was in 4 different bloody sports. The movie, well, no change there. Athletics, though, Jamie's happy. 2 sports movies are going to be made about athletics, 1 about rowing. And our cult hero, we've got 3 different countries in that now. So it's Britain 1, Denmark 1, Cuba 1. And our first athletics sport of the cult hero for the Bulgy. So there you go.
And wrapping it up, let's talk about the legacy of St. Louis, United States first Olympics, these Olympics as a whole. Personally, I think it's just sadly that it's a negative experience. I think the fact that this should be the first one. I like the idea that you have an obscure city. I've kind of been saying ever since Rio, I want to see more cities like Rio hosted. The problem is we're living in a day and age now where people are so focused on, oh, but the facilities aren't what they should be. The hotels aren't very good. They got wooden beds and stuff like that. It's like, go to some third world countries, let's let some, I'm not saying St. Louis a third world, but like go to some places that don't immediately strike you as in this is first class, destination. Brisbane, sure. Or Snug, something like that. I don't know. But I think sadly the legacy of this Olympics is just that everything turned out to be a disaster and it kind of was, a disgrace to the Olympics.
Yeah, I think, like I said before, I think not so much the Olympics, but having the World's Fair exposition, whatever they're calling it, there in St. Louis was huge for the city. I mean, there's a population boom following that, whether or not that's directly correlated. But I do think it elevated the status of St. Louis over a good deal of other kind of second tier cities in the United States. So I think it was good for the city. I do wonder, though, had they been in New York, would more countries have come? Because you got to figure if those European countries can get to New York, it's another 2-3 days travel. I don't know how long train travel took back then to get all the way to St. Louis and all the way back. So I think its location probably hindered the numbers for athletes coming from other countries. I think like we talked about it, like the United States getting the Olympics at a time when sports were really becoming part of our daily lives was huge. More so than winning all the medals, I think getting the Olympics was a huge deal, and kind of interesting that we go almost 30 years, right? Almost 30 years without getting them again. Yeah. Although we do get 2 in the same year, so. But yeah, I
Sorry, Jamie. That was mine.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
That I was gonna say that was mine in terms of because you can sit here for hours and talk about all the shit show and World's Fair and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it's America hosting the Olympics and the first non-European Olympics. This really showcased that it was a global event. Yeah, you've got athletes, but it's not, just European centric, because while we live in an age where America is the center of the world, in 1904, Europe was the center of the world. And America is hosted 8 Olympics, I think, off the top of my head, in terms of winter and summer. So the most by any nation by far. So this is a big deal that they hosted it for the first time. And yeah, as we keep saying, of the most obscure cities that you could think of. And not to take away from St. Louis, I'm sure it's a great city if you're not getting murdered or shot. But it's an obscure city, and they relish it still to this day. As I said, there's Olympic rings there, there's monuments, there's things like that. They embrace the fact that they hold that distinction of we are an Olympic city. It doesn't matter. They can never be taken away. You can take medals away from athletes, but you can never take them away from a city that they host an Olympics. So that's mine. That's my big legacy for it. And I guess technically too, gold, silver, and bronze medals is a pretty good legacy too. Yeah. So there's that as well.
It's not exactly legacy. Oh, sorry, Colin.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's not exactly legacy, but it's just something that I thought about while doing this, and it kind of makes me interested in diving deeper into the next, few games. Like Pierre pretty much, by the good Baron, pretty much gets kicked off the set for 2 straight Olympics, and it is sort of usurped, if you will, to put it as nicely as I can. And yet I'm interested to see how the story goes for the next few Olympics, because that's not what you think of when you hear about him. This little 8-year run is kind of smoothed over, and we don't really talk about it. But I do think it's kind of interesting that the man that's so synonymous with it, the second and third time he tried to run this thing, kind of blew up in his face. So I'm interested to see, how the story evolves.
Yeah, I think it's also not really a surprise that the Paris and the St. Louis ones are our longer episodes here, because there's a lot to talk about in there. I'm very curious to see what the next one's going to be like, though, because we are doing the intercalated games. And just from what little I know about it, I mean, this might be Pierre's, attempt to bring it back. I mean, we're going to go back to Athens. We're going to bring some of the prestige back. We're going to, have opening ceremonies and stuff like that. I mean, it's games kind of like Paris and St. Louis aren't talked about for their reasons. This isn't talked about for a completely different reason, because it's more of a midway point. It's more of an anniversary, a celebration thing. But it is interesting, and it will be interesting to look at this as from the point of view of Pierre de Coubertin, to see, is this where he said, I got to try to gain some control back and get this back on track? Because if anything, the dedication of this man to make what his vision was in 1892, 1894, or whatever it was, work after the failures of Paris and St. Louis, I think is what's admirable with him.
Agreed.
Yeah, I always remember these as being that weird footnote in my Olympic history books that you would read through them and, there was a 1906 one. It's this is very weird. And then I'd always get confused as a kid as to why then when you see the official posters or things like that, they weren't there. And I don't know a lot about them because a lot of these books skip over them. They don't ever mention them, which to this day, the IOC do not formally recognize these as an official Olympics. So medal winners at these games are not Olympic medalists. These do not count on medal tables, things like that. So it was a unique period because, if anything, jumping well ahead to the end of the next episode on these, that the legacy is that this brought the games back to one setting, a separate event, not near the World's Fair. Things like that, and the home of the Olympics again. And we're not going to see an official Olympics in Athens for basically a century, at this point in time. So, yeah, I'm fascinated to go over it because I think we're all probably on the same page that we really don't know a lot about it because no one talks about it. So I'm glad
we're going to.
I'm very glad we are doing an episode because I think it's an important note in Olympic history that these games be talked about.
That pretty much wraps it up for this week. Do we have any great interviews coming up, Ben? Whether you've recorded them or not?
Colin Hilding, this is Off the Podium. We always have great interviews. Come on now. Our next chat, we're speaking with Australian aerial skier Riley Flanagan, aiming to be our first male aerial skier since David Morris, and bringing us back out there into the mixed category of the aerial skiing in Milan, so stay tuned to that. And then it's all about the skimo athletes, plenty of skimo athletes to keep you entertained over the coming months, and also a bunch of other winter athletes. We've got 100 days to go to Milano Cortina episode that we're looking at doing as well. Our Turin opening ceremony review is coming up, but we won't have our intercalated episode until after the Milan Olympics, if you're listening to these in order. In terms of time, but it'll happen eventually. So what a great games the Olympics were in Milan, if you're listening to this just before the intercalated ones. I can't believe Eileen Gu did a poo in a shoe and didn't go through. Oh, poor Eileen Gu. It's 2:31 a.m. Just end the fucking episode, all right?
On that note, thanks for joining us, Ben. But more importantly, Jamie, thank you for bringing a little bit of class this week.
I've never been accused of that, so great.
That's the privilege you get by sitting next to Ben. If you've enjoyed this episode, my name has been Colin Hilding, and if you haven't, it's been James Sullivan.